A woman found herself standing alone in an open field, expressing a sense of isolation. Just then, a mysterious voice prompted her to explain her current situation in 3 lines. The woman explained that she was summoned to another world together with a beautiful joke. She was stuck with a trash skill that was seen as useless. She was in exile, and that was why she was there. However, the woman was a bit confused, realizing that 3 sentences were too short to squeeze in too much. Still, she thought it would be hard to take in no matter how many details she gave. It all started when the woman was on her way home from an overnight camping trip where they fished for trout. There, she accidentally plunged down a giant hole that suddenly appeared under her feet. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a large hall, where a group of cloaked individuals stared at her. With her was another girl who seemed to be a high schooler. Just then, one of the cloaked individuals announced, "Saint is summoning, Unyan Kanyan," evoking confusion in the girls. As all of this happened, the woman caught herself wondering what in the world was happening. There was a beautiful high schooler with her, and there was also an extremely handsome blonde, blue-eyed man. The man kneeled before the high schooler, swooning her with his gesture. Meanwhile, the woman spectated, her mouth gaping wide open as the scene unfolded. Just then, the man noticed the woman, and he stood up, looming over her. He suddenly burst in anger, furious that the woman had a trash skill of all things. She was nothing but garbage to him. The woman was dazed, unable to believe what she had just heard. Irritated, the man told the cloaked individuals to get rid of the middle-aged woman to an appropriate location. Without wasting a second, one of the cloaked individuals raised their palm toward the woman and muttered a chant. The man was unapologetic while the high schooler chuckled with malice. She really got roasted and deported in the same breath, and before the woman knew it, she found herself in the vast field. She was at a complete loss, but on the bright side, she was glad that her belongings were still in one piece. At that moment, she decided to reassess the present situation. The woman's name was Takanashi Rin, and she used to work as a caregiver. Now she was 30 and worked in a clinic for soft acupuncture and moxibustion. Her favorite thing in the world was cooking and eating her catches. She froze as she realized this, but she reassured herself that she would be fine. It was not as if she had lost all her memories. Ever since her childhood, she thoroughly enjoyed catching and eating things. She would head to the mountains together with her grandfather to pick vegetables and mushrooms. As she grew older, she began going on fishing expeditions. The previous day was one such occasion. She had set out for a fishing pond outside the prefecture, teeming with all kinds of trout waiting to be caught. She spent the night at a camping site nearby. She was simply returning from a typical camping trip when her untimely end occurred. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that she would get embroiled in some sort of parallel world summoning. Rin sighed as she recalled what happened. Just then, she wondered what the whole deal was with this saintess summoning thing. And most of all, what the heck was a skill? She suddenly stood up to stretch, thinking that skill reminded her of TRPGs. If only she could see a status menu or something, things surely would get interesting. Just then, something flickered, and as she wished, a status window appeared before her. It depicted her as an otherworlder or traveler, and she had low stats as a beginner. She had a survival skill and a special skill called Trailer, but she could only use it outdoors. She was surprised as she hadn't expected the status bar to actually show up. Just then, she was shocked when she realized that it was Japanese and she was staring right into her own status. As she read the text, she realized that she was such a weak child. She wondered why it turned out this way when she was someone who had thrived in the wilderness. As she read more, she discovered that the use of her skill was restricted to open-air spaces. Just then, she realized why the man was so furious. They were indoors, and that was why he had called it a trash skill. Rin got pissed at the thought that the man tossed her aside without investigating properly. In her anger, she wished for the man to stub his baby toe on the corner of a dresser and faint in agony. After all, he deserved it for dragging her into this. Suddenly, Rin grew curious when she read the details under her survival skill. This skill would provide its user with support on the material and knowledge front, essential for adapting to natural environments and cold conditions to ensure the user's survival. Moreover, should unforeseen circumstances arise, it would integrate viable spiritual and analytical interfaces, as well as bolster physical strength. Rin realized that it was because of this skill that she was able to keep her cool until now. It would have been normal for her to break down in tears, be overwhelmed by confusion, or to wallow in despair and fall into despondency. The reason why she was no different than usual must surely be due to this survival skill of hers, fixing her mental faculties. It was trying to keep her alive one way or another, even in such a dire situation. Sis really has an emotional ad block. Despite that, a sudden wave of sadness washed over her. She wondered if she was struggling to survive. For some reason, she felt like she was about to cry. Did she want to live despite all the things she couldn't even begin to make sense of that were in store? In that case, she must endure whatever came her way. With that, she redirected her focus to the status bar. She noticed that she had another skill, Trailer, and it made her wonder what it entailed. Suddenly she heard a loud thud behind her, making her shiver in fear. To her surprise, it was a sparkling camper van, and she couldn't believe that it was real. She could take advantage of this camper van's mobility as a vehicle to travel wherever she liked, whilst comfortably lounging in its interior. It was a magic vehicle that she could make full use of both indoors and outdoors. Rin was ecstatic, and she wondered what this ungodly skill was. She quickly inspected the camper van until she grew breathless. After a while, she told herself to hold on a minute and calm down. She reminded herself that she must be as cool as a cucumber. In her previous life, she always dreamed of getting a vehicle to use for fishing and camping expeditions. She couldn't deny that the thought had already crossed her mind a bunch of times, prompting her to gather information. However, both the purchase price and maintenance costs were astronomical, and the more she researched it, the more apparent it became that owning one was impractical for everyday usage. Even after she had reached the conclusion that she simply couldn't afford one, she would often allow her imagination to run wild, musing to herself the possibilities of owning a camper van. If the dream vehicle she had wanted since forever immediately fell from the sky like a bolt out of the blue, of course, she would be overjoyed. She didn't stand on ceremony and immediately dashed inside. However, before she could enter, she was dazed by the door handle, thinking to herself that she kinda liked the design. She quickly slid the door open, and what greeted her was beyond her wildest dreams. Everything was new and sparkling, rendering her speechless. As she let everything sink in, she realized that the camper van was way bigger on the inside. To make sure that she wasn't imagining things, she exited the van and entered again. And she did this over and over. She didn't get it, but she told herself not to think about it instead. Shrugging the thought aside, she decided to check out the driver's seat. As she inspected it, she noticed that it ran on an automatic transmission. She had an MT license, but she hadn't driven a manual car in ages, so she was pretty lucky. Suddenly, she noticed a user manual on the driver's seat. The manual thanked her for using the special skill trailer, and with that skill, she could summon a camper van to her coordinates at will, so long as she was outdoors. She was also told that the interior of a dungeon was considered to be outdoors. The body of the vehicle would take in energy substances called magic elements, found in the atmosphere, to fuel travel and vehicle equipment operations, so she could use it without worrying about running out of energy. The water from the faucet, one of the vehicle's accessories, was magic generated from the built-in magic circle. As for drainage, waste would be expelled out of the car as magic elements after it had been magically processed, so there was no need for cleaning up. The vehicle had a magic barrier function, and since it had the effect of concealing the vehicle from those whom the user had not granted approval, it would bar them from entering. The vehicle's form would be unrecognizable to everyone aside from the user and fellow passengers. In order to live comfortably inside, Rin was told to use space magic to expand the living space and improve the amenities. Finally, the manual told her to make herself at home and relax to her heart's content. Not her skill being literally glamping. Rin was amazed, especially since she read everything in monotone. It left nothing to be desired. For some reason, when she thought about skill, she got the sense that she received the short end of the stick. As she stood before the van, she told herself not to think, but feel. However, she wasn't sure about that, and she didn't even know what her special skill was. It was dismissed as a trash skill, and she had no idea what skill that high school girl was bestowed with. Despite that, she still thought that her skill was insanely awesome. As Rin opened the door, she realized that nothing was going to happen if she kept waffling around. So she planned to surrender herself to the curiosity of her age that was bubbling up inside her. She would set out on a whirlwind adventure and save her worries for later. And with that, Rin drove off with her new camper van. As she went on her way, she lowered the window to see the scenic view. All she saw was a vast field filled with wildflowers and grass. She smiled at this, thinking that this feeling while riding was the best. Just then, she told herself that she wanted to banish all thoughts about the van's specs from her mind. There was a lot of storage space, and it was incredible. She never thought that a fishing rod, tackle box, and camping gear would all fit into a teensy amount of space. She wasn't sure if it was a fourth dimension or a different one, but space magic sure was amazing. It even came equipped with a car navigation system which analyzed the surrounding terrain. This feature was super helpful. Moreover, a key wasn't needed. Since she was a skill user, she linked to the trailer by virtue of her status, so she could start the engine even without a key. If she stepped outside a certain radius from the vehicle, it would automatically lock up. Conversely, should she approach it, it would unlock itself. The thought of it excited her, and she wondered what was with this godlike function. Later on, the van informed Rin that she had arrived at her destination. Consequently, the navigation service came to an end. Although Rin had drinking water on hand, she still liked to secure water while she engaged in outdoor activities. Before her was the Riel Lake, and its water was deemed safe for consumption. It was a small lake in the east of Riesfeld, and groundwater flowed in from the nearby mountains, gushing forth from all over. Since it was situated far away from human habitation, an abundance of fauna and flora of various kinds could be sighted there. Just then, Rin recalled that it was explained in the survival skill that it would provide the user with support on the material and knowledge front, essential for adapting to natural environments and social conditions. This made her wonder if it would make some adjustments even without any prior knowledge on her part. To think that it would go that far only proved that the survival system was truly splendid. Just then, something splashed in the water, capturing Rin's attention. A milk trout known to be very tasty suddenly emerged from the water. This large trout was a magical creature that inhabited Riel Lake. At this time of the year they prepared for breeding, and they had a habit of eating up bait. As their name would imply, milk trout were pure white and served as a great source of nutrients and fatty acids. Being a magical creature, it could be eaten raw without fear of parasites. Rin's eyes sparkled as she saw the trout. She was beyond happy that she could go fishing for trout in this world, and it wasn't even stock trout but a wild one. She stuttered for a moment, unable to scream that she was in fishing heaven. She couldn't take it anymore, as she was way too happy and overjoyed to think. Without wasting time, she grabbed her fishing gear and put on some sunglasses. She quickly stood by the lake, her fishing rod at the ready. The water was flowing irregularly over by the rock, so she wondered if she should use top water or some kind of shallow water bait. She had fishing lures that looked like small fish, and she wondered if a minnow would do the trick. However, she didn't have the skills for that, so she decided to start with the crankbait first. With that, she cast the rod to propel the fishing line, and to her surprise, she actually nailed it. Not long after, she felt the trout tugging on the bait, yet she told herself to take a firm grip and calm down. She reeled it in, unable to believe that it was fairly huge. She reminded herself not to panic or freak out because she knew that once it was tired, it would naturally come to her. When that moment came, she jerked the trout as hard as she could, and lo and behold, there it was with all its glory. Rin raised the trout in the air as if it were a trophy, and she announced that she had caught it. She couldn't believe the size of it, and she wondered how many centimeters it was. It was surely heavy, and she guessed it exceeded 80 centimeters. This wasn't the size of catch she could haul in with budget fishing gear cobbled together from a cheap, off-brand fishing rod. It was even a marked-down fishing line for fishing stock trout. Suddenly, a note appeared for Rin, informing her that what she had was an otherworld tackle set, comprising a fishing rod, fishing line, and a fishing reel manufactured in a parallel world. It boasted great strength and could securely reel up prey without breaking or snapping. Rin couldn't believe it, as she thought it was a clearance sale rod not even worth 2,000 yen. She raised the rod in the air, recalling how it was her precious fishing line, an economical one that she got at a bargain, and yet, it had become ever so magnificent. After that, Rin sat on the ground, clearly tired from all that intense fishing. Who could have imagined that being summoned from another world would be that exhausting? Despite that, she grabbed a knife, determined to savor the things she had caught. She raised the knife towards the trout, thinking that it was easier to let out the blood while its heart was still beating. She cut the trout, feeling rather sorry for it as it twitched. It was crucial that she immediately remove the blood for maximum tastiness. That was what she believed. Originally, it seemed like it would be better to destroy the spinal cord, but the taste would still be different just by doing a thorough job of draining its blood. Since she had been blessed with its life, she decided to indulge in good food. After cleaning the trout, Rin went on to fish for just a little while longer. She soon gathered a lot of fish, and she grinned at the sight of them all. Sis out here hoarding fish like it's Pokemon. She was very amazed by Riel Lake, and she wondered if all the milk trout in it were of this size. Just then, a trout swam close to her, making her want to catch it along with everything else. However, she was stuck in a dilemma. She didn't want to release any of them even if she caught more and more. If she caught any more fish of this size, there would be leftovers, which simply wouldn't do. Rin's head ached at her crisis. It vexed her, and she was in a pickle. Suddenly, she snapped back into reality when she noticed a person lying close by. The person had black nails and a horn. It was a man, drenched and unconscious. Rin was relieved that it was a human and not one of those monsters that were common in fantasy stories. However, as the man grunted, Rin noticed his horns, making her wonder if he truly was human. Rin stuttered, realizing that the person before her must be an ogre. She wasn't wearing tiger-striped pants, though. She approached the ogre slowly, and when she finally got close, she realized that at a glance he looked like the ogres that appeared in folklore picture books. Yet he was not particularly scary, probably due to him not having an intimidating appearance like how ogres were depicted. In fact, despite being a bit grim, his looks were quite aesthetically pleasing. Frankly speaking, Rin thought that he was a handsome man. Suddenly the ogre gained consciousness, slowly blinking his eyes as he adjusted to his surroundings. Rin, who was now looking from a distance, was relieved that the ogre was still alive. For now she thought it was fine if she moved a bit closer. She kneeled beside the ogre, asking him if everything was okay and if he was conscious. She asked if he could move, but the ogre only let out a grunt. Rin was convinced that the ogre was either not fully conscious or couldn't move his body too well. The ogre's pupils were bright ruby in color, akin to fresh blood. Rin thought they looked somewhat scary, like candy-coated strawberries. Just then, she told the ogre that it seemed like he couldn't move yet. His body temperature would drop if he kept himself submerged in the water, so she gave him a heads up that she would drag him to the shore. The ogre groaned and said no, leaving Rin confused. Despite that, she was relieved that he was still conscious. She apologized in advance, as she had to use her fish-lifting strength in dragging the ogre to the shore. She tugged at the ogre, whom she now called elder brother, noticing that he looked a bit flustered. However, she told herself not to mind it, thinking that every life mattered. She excused herself as she lifted him, telling him to fold his arm for a bit. She apologized if it was painful, then she used all her strength to pull him out of the water. The ogre groaned in pain, which made Rin worried. She knew that this place was full of gravel and pebbles, and even with the ogre's clothes, it must be painful to be pulled over like that. Still, this really couldn't be helped. She alone couldn't carry such a well-built person on her shoulders or arms. She was extremely sorry. If it were a grandma with a smaller build than her, she could have picked her up and moved her with ease. At that moment, Rin thought that no one should look down upon a former caregiver and current clinician practicing acupuncture and moxibustion. Not only acupuncture and moxibustion, but somehow or the other, she also had a nursing license. Saying all that aloud motivated Rin to bring the ogre safely to the shore. Loki feels like she's padding her resume mid-scene. She gasped and wheezed as she kneeled close to the ogre. Just then, she noticed that the ogre was staring at her, so she smiled. Although he was already on the shore and out of the water, if he kept wearing wet clothes, his temperature would drop. With that, she told him that she would bring something to wipe his clothes with. The ogre, who was now sitting up, merely muttered a few words. Just then, he snapped his fingers, and within a few seconds he was all nice and fluffy with his clothes dry. Rin freaked out, causing the ogre to back away in shock. Rin asked what he just did, though she speculated it was the thing they called magic. It was something right out of a fantasy. Suddenly, the ogre staggered, prompting Rin to hold him up so he wouldn't fall. She asked if he was okay, but the ogre suddenly spoke, saying he was hungry as hell. Rin let out a loud reaction, realizing what the ogre just said. The ogre's stomach growled and grumbled, but Rin couldn't help but romanticize it. She couldn't believe that it was the sound of his stomach, which was pretty amazing to her in more ways than one. Just then, Rin thought that with the ogre's well-built body, even basic metabolism must consume a lot of energy. She had also drained blood from the milk trout, so she could probably make at least a meal out of it. Although it would actually taste better after aging it, since it would form inosinic acid after death, which increases the umami. Moreover, Rin felt that she was also starting to feel hungry. It would also be uneasy on her conscience to ignore a starving person. As they say, even an unexpected meeting may lead to lasting bonds. Rin had gotten lost in her thoughts that she didn't even realize that the ogre was now lying flat on the ground. She then stood up, saying that a one night's lodging and food was no problem. The ogre was in capable hands. With that out of the way, Rin wondered if she should just grill the milk trout. At the very least, it could be made with just a fire. Although there was enough space to deploy the camping van around the area, there was no road to move it around. After returning, she wondered if she could make it disappear once. The van was parked nearby, but it suddenly disappeared. She was surprised that it vanished, so she screamed for it to come out once more. Just then, a loud thud appeared behind her, sending shivers down her spine. So apparently it could switch the skill on or off at will, or rather she could decide whether to have the van appear or disappear, and summoning it would make it appear close to her current location. So that was what summoning relative to your coordinates actually meant. Just then, Rin decided that it was time for some parallel world outdoor cooking and camping, which she was excited for. For now, in order to guide the ogre into it once he woke up, she wanted to set up the tent first. She thought that she wasn't that cruel to have a person who was nearly drowning moments ago stay outdoors. Although this was a simple tent used for shade or temporary rest, it was better than nothing. This time, instead of using the kitchen inside the van, she planned on setting up an open-air fire and cooking right beside the ogre so that it could warm him up a little. She knew it would be terrible if he caught a cold. Rin was used to lining up boulders to make a simple stove, but this time she decided to use a bonfire stand. It would take some time and she must finish moving around before sunset. The visibility would be low once it became completely dark after all. That being said, there was still a lot of work to do, so lighting up the fire probably needed to wait a bit longer. After that, Rin headed to the camper van's kitchen, which stunned her. Everything was sparkling and shiny, and it was complete with all the basic necessities. At a glance, it looked like an amazing kitchen, which excited her. Just then, she found a pitcher, and on it was a note informing her that the barley tea was on the house. This made her want to explore each nook and cranny right away, but she had to take a good grip of herself, knowing she had priorities. She must finish the preparations to some extent before sunset, so she decided to leave the thorough exploration for later. After that, she searched for the kitchen knives, which she found in a nearby cupboard. She proceeded to clean the trout, and upon slicing it, the shimmering meat greeted her, which she already knew would taste delicious. Just then, her eyes lit up when she got a good idea. It was time for secret eating. She tried a small slice of the trout, and as expected, it was very tasty. It was nothing less than a parallel world ingredient. Although it contained a lot of fat, there was no stink or greasiness in it. She was satisfied as it was delicious despite being uncured. She decided to make it into sashimi or carpaccio for the next day. Maybe she could grind and boil the head and the backbone together to make dashi stock, and she could use it later in other recipes. Rin grinned at the thought of her future plans. Although it would have been good if she could skewer it whole like dancing ayu skewers, the fish was too big and it couldn't be helped. With that, she seasoned the trout and grilled them. She listened to the fire cackle, satisfied with its nice sound. There was truly nothing like grilling over an open fire to complete the camping experience. Meanwhile, the ogre, who was lying close by, suddenly caught a whiff of the grilled trout. His eyes opened and he immediately sat up. Rin asked if he was awake now, and she also inquired about his health and if it hurt anywhere. The ogre didn't respond to her questions and only said that he was so hungry that he could eat a bear. Rin awkwardly acknowledged him, but she was glad to see that he was doing fine. It seemed like it was just about fried, so Rin asked him if he wanted to eat now. She handed a skewer to the ogre, reminding him that it was hot and that he should be careful. The ogre, who had drool on his face, only stared at the skewer, seemingly confused. Seeing this, Rin thought it was only natural to be cautious about food offered by someone they had just met. Then, out of nowhere, the ogre said sorry and thanks, then he announced he would gladly eat it, not him apologizing before eating like it's communion. He grabbed the skewer and Rin told him that it was all right and that it was her pleasure. Without a moment's notice, the ogre took one bite after another, clearly enjoying his meal. Rin smiled as she observed him. Then she went ahead to have a taste as well. Before taking a bite, she thought that gracefulness and good manners were all worthless in front of the allure of BBQ. Rin took a big bite, and it absolutely blew her mind. The skin was cooked crispy and crunchy, and it was tasty enough with just that. The first sensation was the slightly strong flavoring of salt. But the moment she bit into it, sweet juices overflowed inside her mouth. The saltiness and sweetness mixed together. From the body without excess water that had been lightly grilled, the fat oozed out and broke down. Rin gulped it down her throat and she let out a sigh of relief. She continued to eat, realizing that the milky aftertaste wafted into her nose. It was probably why it was called milk trout. She then drank some barley tea, refreshing her beyond her expectations. The salted grilled fish also went well with barley tea, and it was so good. Rin realized that these otherworldly ingredients were amazing. The fish didn't crumble even after being directly put on fire without aging it, and it was filled to the brim with umami. She could fish it and eat it too, which was just the best. Rin smiled at the thought, but then she noticed the ogre staring at her, as if he wanted to say something. She could still hear his stomach growling, so she told him he could eat as much as he wanted because there was still a lot of stuff. Within a short amount of time, all the skewers vanished. Rin was surprised, seeing that the ogre's appetite was a force to be reckoned with. Just then, she noticed that the ogre was now starting to doze off. He got sleepy after eating a lot, and Rin knew exactly how that felt. With that, she told the ogre that she had prepared a tent. It was sheltered with blankets, enough for a single person. She directed him to where it was, and she told him to feel free to use it if he wished. The ogre, who tried to stay awake, said sorry and that he would borrow it. He wobbled away, rubbing his eyes as he went. Somehow Rin should be worried about the ogre running away with her camping equipment, but even if they did get stolen, in the worst case, it wouldn't trouble her thanks to the camping van. Of course, because of her attachment to the equipment, she would get lonely and cry a lot. However, the ogre didn't seem to dislike humans in the first place. Or rather, he didn't look like someone who would steal from others. The survival skill was also not ringing any alarms. As she thought of it, she realized that the survival in question was actually an extremely useful skill. When she was searching for firewood earlier and walking around the area, a red alarm suddenly popped up. Apparently, the grass near her feet had poisonous thorns. It was most probably a system meant to alert her immediately if she was ever near any danger. Therefore, if someone directed feelings that were negative in nature, it would definitely alert her against such people. Moreover, the ogre was the first person she met in this world after arriving, so she really wanted to put her faith in him. As Rin watched the ogre sleep peacefully, the moon suddenly caught her attention. She reached out to it as she thought about her current situation. She ended up coming into another world that she knew nothing about, but no matter what would happen, she needed to live in this world for the foreseeable future. At the very best, she had a skill aimed at survival and skills for movement and fort defense. Making good use of that advantage, she wanted to go on a tour all around the country for sightseeing and enjoy herself to the fullest. For that reason as well, she must thoroughly examine the interior of her camping van before going to bed. Finally, it was time for the main event. Rin was very excited to check out what was inside the fridge. To her surprise, the fridge's interior was unimaginably vast, contrary to its apparent size. Seeing that, it was pretty much a given. Rather, what surprised her was the fact that it contained things far exceeding her expectations. Inside the fridge, she also found some clear dashi, soy sauce, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, mayonnaise, miso paste, and mirin. She also found some butter, consomme, and even flour and rice. As she hugged the rice container, she suddenly noticed a note left by the van, informing her that everything inside was free for her to use. However, it made it clear that it was not like it did those things for her. Rin thought that the assortment of ingredients there seemed to be based on the contents of her fridge and pantry from her apartment. The miso paste, soy sauce, and sake were the same as the ones from her hometown's brewery. The butter was similar to the souvenir her dad sent her from his trip to the northern country, and the mayo was also quite similar to the premium brand she once bought to spoil herself. As she rummaged through the fridge some more, she finally found bottles filled with her special handmade spice mix. She had no idea how the logic behind it worked, but she was very thankful for it. Bro, she just unlocked Costco Premium Plan. Her life in an entirely different world had begun, so familiar flavors from back home would definitely be a huge help in keeping her motivated. Plus, as long as staples like rice and flour were available, food wouldn't be an issue. After that, Rin went through the manual for the appliances. As she read the information about the rice cooker and the oven range, her eyes lit up in excitement. Not only did the diamond coating on the pot increase efficiency, but it also cooked the rice soft and fluffy. It said that this was one of those larger types that could hold around 4 liters of rice. On top of that, the oven range also doubled as a grill and as a food steamer. It was such a high-class oven that it had a warming and defrosting functionality, perfect for frying meat. Also, it could be used for non-fried recipes too. Overwhelmed with joy, Rin exclaimed that everything was amazing. It also had cooking utensils and tableware. At that moment, Rin realized that this kitchen was better than hers. As she opened the oven, she thought about non-fried food. They were technically called fried food that wasn't fried in oil, which could help with weight management. However, she couldn't help but feel like it was trying to deceive her somehow, and they probably couldn't get along that well. While the taste wasn't really that awful, fried-like food wasn't truly exciting or anything. Actually, she changed her mind. Non-fried food could never reach the same level as fried food. She would always run towards the fried food and she would deem it the winner. Then, out of nowhere, Rin banged her fist on the table asking who called her chubby. She argued that her bones were just a little thick and the area around her arms and buttocks just had a teeny bit more meat. She even had a proper waist. Just then she reached for her legs, squishing them and then ultimately sulking in despair. She lay on the cold floor thinking it didn't matter, she would just aim to become a funny and energetic fatso. Imagine losing a fight you started with, yourself. She fell silent for a moment, then decided it was time for sleep. She quickly went up the ladder, revealing her spacious bedroom. She was secretly looking forward to sleeping in a camping van's bunk bed. She then caressed the fluffy mattress, which was softer than she expected. Without a moment's notice, Rin fell fast asleep. The next morning, the ogre kneeled and bowed his head before Rin, apologizing to her and thanking her at the same time. Rin was startled and she flustered as she told the ogre to raise his head. He was making an exaggeration and it was only 6 in the morning. It was a request, and she pleaded with him to raise his face. The ogre did as he was told, and upon revealing his face, Rin noticed that he looked way better than the previous day. Food and rest were important for outdoor activities after all. Just then, she noticed that the ogre was holding a wooden container, so she asked what was inside it. The ogre replied that it was almirage meat, and since he came across one by chance, he decided to hunt it down. Rin wondered what an almirage was, and she tried to recall if she had seen them in TRPGs. She asked if they were those horned bunnies, and the ogre confirmed it, adding that their meat was delicious. He handed it to Rin, thinking that it would be good for showing his gratitude. Rin's eyes lit up, realizing she was right, even with the meat's good taste. Just then, she wondered if it was even okay to have it. The ogre asked if she didn't fancy rabbit meat, but Rin replied that that was not it. She wasn't expecting to receive thanks like that, and she told the ogre not to mind it. The ogre said there was no way that was going to pass. Rin had shared her valuable rations and shelter with him. The rabbit meat wasn't even enough as thanks for saving his life, but he was hoping she would take it. Rin hesitated for a moment, but she ended up accepting the ogre's offering. She thanked him, making the ogre content. Rin had already secured a lot of rations and said shelter was already there, but it wasn't like she could have said that out loud. Just then, Rin asked the ogre how he ended up in the situation from the other day. The ogre explained that it was a very embarrassing story. In the middle of bathing, monsters of small build called Ferretta pillaged through his bag of food and ran away with it. While he was able to retrieve his camping tools, the food was already half-eaten and spoiled. Finally, he slipped off a cliff while trying to grab fruit from a tree, and he fell down into the river under him. And that was how it went. As Rin listened to the story, she realized that the ogre had terrible luck. She then asked if Ferettas were that dangerous, but the ogre said no. They looked cute and they didn't pack a punch either. Fundamentally, they were quite docile, but their curiosity was boundless and they moved in packs. On top of being nimble and dexterous, they would just rummage through bags they had never seen before. Rin realized that half of it was just them being playful, while the ogre thought it was unbearable for the target of their mischief. Suddenly, Rin realized that the ogre had nothing on his person. The ogre was stunned into silence, then he awkwardly admitted that that was how it was. Rin quickly apologized and she tried to clarify that it wasn't her intention to deal him a blow. Rin's flustered state made the ogre smile, and then he apologized for making her listen to something so miserable. He then introduced himself as Vil, and he recalled how Rin saved him, so he was thankful. Rin was surprised, but she smiled right away, telling Vil that it was nice to meet him. She then introduced herself as Rin, and she told Vil that misery benefited a person, so he shouldn't mind it at all. She flashed a huge smile, which somehow confused Vil. Rin intentionally avoided using her family name. After all, giving her family name in a fantasy-like setting similar to the Middle Ages would make her sound like a big deal, as if she were nobility or a wealthy farmer or merchant. That being said, she thought that Vil's name really suited him. She held out her hand to him, but he only stared at her. Vil struggled to say it, but he asked Rin if she shouldn't be more cautious around him. Rin explained that if he were a bad person, he wouldn't have brought back the meat or talked about his situation or shared his name with her. If he were intending to steal anything, he had probably already done the deed and left before she woke up. Since this was a place devoid of public eyes, if he were a kidnapper, he would have attacked her without anyone noticing, and there wouldn't even be any proof left. At the back of Rin's head, she also knew that her survival skill hadn't given any peculiar reaction. In the first place, if he had such intentions, he would have already done it by now. She felt guilty for even imagining Vil plotting something against her. She also considered the probability of his betrayal after earning her trust. Rather than aiming for the trust of someone like her who currently owned absolutely nothing, it would be more profitable for him to target someone else. More importantly, Vil didn't look like a bad person, which was a statement that stunned him. Vil awkwardly agreed, swearing to heaven that he didn't wish to hurt the savior of his life. Rin knew that her eyes were the best at discerning people, but it was clear that he was way better than those people who were in the summoning hall. It was all clear as day. Just then, Rin noticed that Vil was zoning out, so she waved to capture his attention. She then asked if he was used to traveling since he was doing it alone. Vil confirmed that he was, though he messed up this time. He then revealed that he was an adventurer with some experience. Rin grew excited, realizing that there were jobs after all. Vil said she was right. All cities and villages that were at least moderately sized had guilds or their branches. He asked if there was something the matter, but Rin said no. Due to some circumstances, she never had the fate to run into such organizations. Just then, Rin turned to face Vil, telling him that if it were only until he reached his destination, then it would be fine. She would provide food and shelter, and in exchange, she wanted Vil to take her along on his journey. It was a good chance for her, depending on how one looked at it. If they traveled together until they reached the closest town or village, she could share her rations and accommodation, and Vil could be her guide. She could get info about this world, and it was a win-win situation. Just then, Vil said that it was a very good proposal for him, but he wondered if it was really alright, especially since Rin didn't have a lot of stuff on her. Rin struggled to explain, but she told Vil that she had different skills that could detect what was edible and what was not, so it was possible to procure ingredients as they went on. Vil asked if it was for real, as that kind of skill was really enviable from the viewpoint of a huge eater like him. Rin stuttered, while Vil argued that it wasn't a lie. Rin wanted to reveal that if they traveled together, she couldn't keep silent about her trailer skill. She finally decided to just talk about it when the time was right. With that, she told Vil that she would be extremely grateful if they could set out together from now on. Vil agreed, hoping it wasn't too much of a bother, but for him, it was a wish come true. He now put himself in Rin's care. Rin's face lit up, then she shook Vil's hand, telling him that it was she who would be in his care. And with that, the two had a deal. With that settled, Rin suggested hashing out the details over breakfast. She also found some wild plants they could eat too. Vil was baffled that she wanted to eat grass, so he asked if they were edible. Rin explained that it wasn't the main dish. She was considering making something with the fish she caught the other day. She then asked Vil if he was fine with something resembling porridge. Vil replied that he liked it, but he wondered if it was okay for him to eat with her. Rin smiled as she said yes, since they were traveling together. Vil was glad to hear it and he thanked Rin. With that, Rin prepared the food. As Vil left to explore, Rin decided to avoid revealing everything about her camper van before having their meal. As she got inside the van to cook, she was convinced that it would definitely be a big deal, and she would have to give a proper explanation. Moreover, talking about such concerning topics right before eating would affect the flavor negatively. Their breakfast for the day was yesterday's milk trout made into soup with rice and carpaccio. She wanted to steam it in foil. She wanted to make carpaccio instead of sashimi, and hopefully adding olive oil would keep them full for a longer period of time. She had also buried the fish bones and internal organs in a hole under the ground, praying that they would find their way back to nature. After seasoning the descaled and deboned milk trout with salt and pepper, she wrapped them in aluminum foil and let them steam. Then she placed the frying pan on the wire mesh and sautéed rice in olive oil. Usually putting in chopped garlic or ginger at this stage would add to the flavor, but unfortunately she couldn't find anything inside the refrigerator. Although there was ginger powder in the spice box, it really wasn't as good as using raw ginger. Unbeknownst to Rin, Vil was observing her as she cooked. Shortly after, Rin lightly mixed some salt and pepper into the rice once it had turned transparent. She added the milk trout dashi, the soy sauce, and the meat that was scraped off from the bones. She lowered the heat and then let it cook slowly. Mixing the ingredients too much would make it sticky, so she maintained a light touch while mixing. This would also help avoid getting the food burnt. Since she wanted the steam to escape, she decided it was better not to cover the frying pan. In the meantime, she took the milk trout that had been aging since the previous day, and she cut them into thin slices. After that, she added the wild grass named Norsley, which they picked up earlier. She dressed it uniformly with salt, pepper, and olive oil, and with that, the carpaccio was done. Vil's stomach grumbled as he observed, catching Rin's attention. She told him to wait a bit longer, reassuring him that the porridge would also be done shortly. Vil struggled to explain, but he told Rin that his stomach wasn't cooperating at all. Rin fully understood, knowing that the smell during cooking stimulated the appetite. With that, Rin resumed her preparations. Just as the rice got soft, she mixed in chopped Norsley and heated it a little. Finally, everything was complete. While it had more water than risotto, one couldn't call it ardent. Since she fried the rice, she could label it as a risotto-style rice congee. After that, Rin and Vil set up the table, and together they prayed. Vil offered his gratitude for another day of sustenance, and after that, Rin suggested that they dig in. Upon taking her first bite, Rin was overjoyed to find that the viscous texture made it so good. Using sake and the dashi and a hit of soy sauce in the flavor had completely attenuated the smell of raw fish. The Norsley was also extremely fragrant, and the gooiness of the rice congee also made it very easy to eat. The texture of the individual ingredients was also very prominent. Just then, Rin noticed that Vil was taking his first bite, but he seemed shocked. She asked what was wrong, thinking that the food was not suited to his taste. Vil explained that it wasn't. He just didn't think that the day would come when he could eat such delicious outdoor cooking. Vil apologized, but he wanted to have seconds. Rin was happy to grant him that, and she urged him to eat a lot. Homie said seconds plus like a Victorian orphan at soup day. Not long after, all the food vanished. Vil complimented Rin for her excellent cooking, and he asked her if she was previously a chef or something. Rin explained that cooking was actually just a hobby of hers, and she loved cooking different types of foods. To her, cooking was like a hobby, but she also liked to try out various dishes. Because of that, she ended up wanting to cook them all. She was just a foodie driven by logic. As they talked, Rin poured some barley tea into her glass. She was amazed by it, since the jar never became empty. Suddenly, Vil asked Rin what she was, making her spit her barley tea. She was in shock, wondering what was with that sudden blazing fastball. Vil explained that it was a first for him in particular to encounter chairs that could be folded and unfolded at will, or wire mesh that could withstand flames. There were also tents and beds that were strange to the touch. Rin stuttered, but she suddenly fell quiet, knowing she had to explain sooner or later. Just then, Vil told her that no matter who she was his savior all the same. As long as things didn't get extreme, he promised not to do anything that would hurt her. Rin was confused, so she asked him to elaborate. Vil hesitated, but he explained that those were such things as betraying him or hurting him. Rin anxiously told him that he didn't have to worry about that. Although she wasn't an expert, she was still somewhat in the medical field, so she would never intentionally hurt anyone. Since Vil wanted to know about her background so much, she thought about telling him about her circumstances and skills. She couldn't keep quiet forever, and going by her personality, she couldn't hide them either. Instead of having him harbor distrust, it was probably better to explain everything to him right away. If she could sense an intent for abuse of her skill, she could always flee using her camper van when things would get bad. With that, she told Vil that she wanted to talk about something before they departed. Vil stared at her with curiosity, which somehow distracted her. She stood up, realizing that the gesture he made looked strangely cute on his strong build. She already knew this, though. Dealing with a handsome man was such a hassle. With that thought aside, she thought that seeing was believing. She stretched her muscles, wishing that the van appeared in a way that Vil could also see it. Just then, a loud noise shocked Vil, making him ask what that was. Rin explained that this was the skill that she wanted to tell him about. Vil struggled to understand, and he was more curious about Rin's true nature. Rin was just a former caregiver who was currently a clinician practicing acupuncture and moxibustion, but she had already expected Vil to become wary. Of course, she would have reacted the same way in the face of such a bizarre thing. She wasn't really sure where to start, but she told Vil to listen to her story. She explained to him the concept of saintess summoning and how she arrived in this world during a ritual for summoning a saintess. She wasn't actually from this world. This somehow made sense to Vil as he recalled it appearing in songs sung by minstrels and folklores. According to folklore from his childhood, there were once women summoned from a separate world who purified monsters from this world and led them to peace. Apparently, they were called saintesses. Rin was curious, seeing that they were still using the word apparently. Just then, Rin explained that one woman was summoned together with her during the ritual, but she was thrown away as useless garbage. Vil was shocked because if Rin was useless, he would have been dead by now. Rin thought that they probably weren't looking for the qualities she possessed. She vaguely remembered them saying they wanted her out of their sight as soon as possible. Vil thought that summoning her just because they wanted to, then callously teleporting her to such a remote location, was something that terrible people would do. Rin teared up at the thought that from Vil's perspective she was treated brutally. She agreed with him, calling those people inhuman. Thankfully, her impression wasn't the wrong one here. After that, Rin continued her story, explaining that after she was thrown away, she activated her skill, which could be activated outdoors. It was possible to store and bring out a considerable amount of stuff in it. Vil understood, but he couldn't help but think about how Rin was slandered as useless. He was pretty sure they couldn't see her skill because she was inside a building during the ritual. Although she probably couldn't contribute much in battle, she would be super useful in mobilizing the military. Rin thought this was possible, but only for small units. She wasn't so sure about large-scale operations. Vil begged to differ. If she had a container of this much storage capacity that could be summoned at will relative to the user's coordinates, then it should be possible for her to ride a horse and transport lots of food, medical supplies, as well as weapons and armor. It was an ability with which she could maintain the front line alone. Bro really looked at Rin and thought, potential weapon of mass destruction. Rin thought the concept was scary. Apparently she could preserve the warfront by herself. If those shrewd people found out about it, they might just force her into battles by... That was literally a death by overwork flag, an utter destruction flag. She wouldn't want that. Or rather, maybe Vil didn't understand that the camper van was also an automobile. He was calling it a container, but she also understood why he would think that, as it was definitely inconceivable to imagine this lump of steel moving around. Just then, Vil asked Rin about what she planned on doing from now on. She explained that for now, since she had shelter and food out of the 3 basic necessities, she wanted to travel around and enjoy the world. Vil asked if she didn't feel like becoming a legend of war, and Rin anxiously said no. She was not that much of a goody two-shoes to work for those heinous people who called her over at their own convenience and then threw her aside just like that. She absolutely refused. Vil realized she was right, as he also didn't want other people to ring out his savior. Hearing him say such things stunned Rin into silence. Just then, Vil recalled what Rin said about enjoying the world and wanting to enjoy it. However, to enter towns she needed to have currency and identification papers. She was shocked, realizing that she hadn't thought the specifics through. She didn't even have any of this world's currency in the first place. Her previous vocation was moxibustion, so she didn't have any idea if she could find those tools, and God knows what the procedures were for opening a business. She could do a little bit of massaging, but again, she needed to know how to open a business. She probably couldn't collect and sell food using the survival skill, and she didn't know if it was required to go through an intermediary, or if individual business was permitted, not to mention the rules for selling and buying things. Rin kneeled and wept on the ground, realizing that above all there was no way of protecting herself from dangerous creatures. She was now starting to think that she may have been checkmated. Just then, Vil noticed that she was troubled since she reacted that way. Rin admitted she was, and actually the situation was more dire than what she had imagined. In that case, Vil mentioned that if it was okay with her, she could party up with him and take charge of their food. She could also act as the party's porter. Rin asked if taking charge of the food meant being a chef, but Vil made it clear that he didn't want her to overexert herself making extravagant foods like a chef does. Rather, he didn't mind if she just created dishes that she normally liked to cook. In that case, Rin explained that her expertise was around the level of what they just had earlier. She believed that mostly anyone could make food of that level. Vil then explained to her that their party was composed of people who, for some godforsaken reason, always cultivated something unspeakable whenever they put on their aprons in the kitchen. Rin joked at this, asking if he said something. Vil shared that they had to challenge deep dungeons, battle savage monsters, and hunt for treasure chests. Even though they took the time to set up camp after tiring themselves out, what awaited them was raw meat burnt to cinders and soup that was either tongue-numbingly salty or thinner than hot water. These dudes fight dragons but lose to seasoning. Just then Vil kneeled before Rin, telling her that her fried fish was miraculously balanced between having just the right amount of salt and the perfect crispiness. Even her congee wasn't pure charcoal black at the bottom, nor was it rock hard from being undercooked. Rin asked what kind of congee he was even describing, as it seemed like he was speaking from experience. It sounded catastrophic, and Vil agreed. For them, every quest was catastrophe. He promised that he and his team would share rewards, and Rin would be free to do whatever she liked when they weren't on quests. Vil pleaded with Rin, asking her to save his party. Rin understood how easy it was to get worn out without good food, but was it really so bad that Vil would scream out his sorrow to the depths of the earth? Just then, Vil spoke, saying that although her face was saying, "It doesn't have to be me," all the people with any hint of a cooking ability had exclusive contracts with other parties already. So for them, meeting Rin had been a true stroke of luck. Meanwhile, Rin was shocked that he read her mind. Vil continued his sales talk, saying that being hired exclusively for parties was not such a bad deal. Rin could earn money and save some, and she could help them out at the same time. She would also get to sightsee different places while on quests. Rin's eyes sparkled as she heard that, as it was exactly what she wanted to do. When Vil put it that way, it did sound lucrative. Just then, Vil spoke again, saying that even if she were somehow able to enter a city, she would have to develop trust among people who had little to no idea about her situation, so that she could function well with them. He, on the other hand, already knew the details of her current situation, and he would definitely be easier for her to work with. He could also cover for her and perform as an intermediary between her and other people. Rin, who was dazed from his frantic monologue, merely said that it would be great. Vil continued, saying that he couldn't guarantee that their journey would be 100% safe, but their party had pretty capable people. They also had other women in the party, so it should put Rin at ease. Rin thought this was such a fervent invitation, but she had to consolidate the current situation a bit. While she did have skills beneficial to this world due to her origins, she had no knowledge about this world's cultural norms. It was crazy to assume that someone like her could live a decent life. She was in a world like this, where she could only rely on herself. She was truly grateful for Vil's proposal, and she considered saying yes. Just then Vil told her it was just a facade, which confused Rin. Vil explained that she was the savior who rescued him when he was literally starving to death, and because of that he wanted to somehow find a way to repay the kindness she had shown him. He wanted to show some personal goodwill towards her. Rin blushed at his voice, and she told him that he didn't have to go that far. "Girl, blink twice if you need HR." Rather, she felt indebted for his help. Just then, Vil grabbed her arm, telling her that he wouldn't let her go away. Instead, he wanted to have a calm and peaceful discussion about how they could understand each other better. He smiled at Rin, and she couldn't help but be freaked out. Although it was only for a moment, her heart fluttered. She just made the blunder of a lifetime, a huge one at that. Just then, Vil told Rin that if she joined their party, Arya would definitely not let her go. After inquiring about the members of Vil's party, Rin learned that there was one called Arya, a non-human arachnia, who also happened to be a wife. She was a thread user who fought skillfully by manipulating thread. Next was Ed, an alchemist. Rin heard that he was Arya's husband, yet he was a frivolous skirt chaser, an imbecilic normie who deserved to die without mercy. Finally, there was a priest named Sanon. Apparently he was the type who would be happy to hold grilled meat and bones with his own bare hands and bite into them with glee. He was truly the embodiment of a wild person. Vil was the draconic ogre of the Dragal race, known for excelling in physical strength and magic power, but also known to have terrible efficiency. Rin thought it made sense, and she had already guessed that. Vil believed that it was quite possible that he could have starved to death this time if it wasn't for Rin. Rin was relieved to know that she rescued him just in time, and she was glad that she made it. She was also excited to think that there were many non-human species. They had finally reached the fantasy genre. Vil had a lot of battle strength, but he could get hungry easily. She, on the other hand, had no battle strength but could at least search for food to make. So basically, this meant that she and Vil would do great as partners, and they could really work well together. Just then, Vil informed Rin that Arya was also a big eater, which shocked her. Actually, it wasn't just Arya. Ed and Senyon both had huge appetites too. Rin told Vil that she would try her best to feed them all, and she told him not to worry because she was used to making a lot of food. Suddenly, Rin asked Vil where they got their basic food ingredients. Vil explained that from their quest completion, they would get rewards from selling drop items. They would set aside some money for buying their ingredients, medicine, and daily necessities. What remained ended up equally divided among everyone as their individual profit. Rin understood that it seemed like the cost of joint goods was also dependent on the gross amount earned. Just then, Vil mentioned Rin's share of the rewards, and he asked if he could hand over 60% of the 5 equal parts. Rin tried to process the math, imagining how the system would look. After deducting necessary expenses from the quest money, the remainder would be split into 5 equal parts. From there, she would receive 60% of the total, but give back 10% to each of the other members, leaving everyone with a fair cut. Reflecting on it, Rin realized that she was on a probationary period. Since she would be leaving the entirety of the risk of battle to her party members and would instead need to be protected by them, everything made sense. This proposal indeed sounded pretty balanced. With that, Rin told Vil that she understood and that she was fine with it. If anything, she felt grateful to even be offered any share of the profits. Vil's gaze shifted for a moment, making Rin think that he felt apologetic. However, in her opinion, Vil had to be sensible in spending money, so he should cheer up. Rin knew that if the gross earnings didn't increase and yet the total number of heads rose, then each member's total profits would be reduced. Since her performance was an unknown variable, there was no guarantee that she would be helpful anyway. As she was hired by Vil's words alone, she was left wondering how well the other party members would accept her. She realized that would be a problem, so she sulked as she thought of it. She couldn't even say that she completely knew how to use her skills just yet. She started to overthink, wondering if it was really fine for someone like her to just join a party. Sensing that she was getting all gloomy, Vil asked Rin if she wanted to explore the area a little. If she practiced using her skill while they moved around, it might just give her more insight into its usage. As he helped her up, he asked if it was okay. Still, he thought that Rin's skill was very useful in its own way. But no matter how strong a skill could be, it was definitely not omnipotent. That was why, for her own satisfaction, she must eke out every last bit of usefulness out of it until she would be able to completely gauge its exact limitations. However, Rin had already come to realize that, while survival could be an excellent skill, it could literally only help her survive. It wouldn't be as easy as saying that she would definitely be alive with survival's help. Even if survival could warn her about those dangerous enemies, a weak, non-athletic amoeba like her couldn't manage to run away safely. She might be able to shake them off using the camper van, but what if she needed some specific kind of knowledge and wisdom to overcome a power struggle? What if she uncovered some giant conspiracy? Without common sense or knowledge about current affairs in this world, it was unlikely that one could escape freely. She couldn't even conveniently summon the camper van anywhere she wanted. No matter how excellent survival was, the responsibility of using its information and knowledge to make a final decision lay upon her. No matter how convenient a skill was, it would still be useless if its user wasn't good enough to properly utilize it. Not her admitting the skill is cracked, but she's the bug that makes it useless. Improving her skills was going to be a necessity. No matter which world one was in, they must strive to improve themselves. Also, this could be a real chance for her to know more about herself and about her unique skill, right there and now. With that, she called out to Vil, telling him that she would be inconveniencing him a lot, yet she wanted him to take care of her. She bowed before Vil, and he also told her that he would be in her care too. With that, they agreed to leave once their preparations were completed. After cleaning up, Rin placed a water flask in her fanny pack. Now it was time for them to step into a brand new fantasy world. Just then, Vil placed a mantle on her shoulders, telling her that it was made out of leather from a rock deer hide. It might feel a bit stuffy, but it would add an extra layer of defense. He insisted that she put it on just in case. He also told her that they could go to a place comfortable for her and that they should take their time. Rin thought that Vil was handsome, compassionate, and good-natured, but nobody had enough hearts to survive having him that close. Handsome men were truly scary, and that was precisely why Rin had to walk away. She was even too dazed to hear Vil telling her that she was headed the wrong way and that her mantle was slipping off. Later on, they finally arrived at a scenic part of the woods. Rin was so enamored by nature that she had to recite a haiku from her heart. She breathed in and out, enjoying the delicious air. Meanwhile, Vil was confused why she would even call air delicious, as she couldn't breathe it into her stomach. With that, Rin realized that Vil might be hungry again, and he admitted to it, saying that his tummy felt a bit peckish. Bro's personality is just being angry. Rin was surprised, but she guessed that he would really get hungry if he woke up early. Because of that, Rin decided that it would be good if she prepared snacks that could last a full day. Just then, she noticed something nearby, and she pointed at it, saying that it was their food. Vil asked what happened, and Rin explained that there was something growing nearby and it looked like fruit. She kept pointing, telling Vil that it was a red and dark purple tree above them. Vil took a look and finally understood what Rin meant. She was pointing to a halberry, a type of berry consisting of tiny grains that collected together to form a fruit. When ripe, it would turn dark purple in color, and it had a delicious, sweet taste. The unripe version was acidic and unsuitable for consumption, but it could be processed into products such as jams. Its leaves could be dried and decocted into an herbal tea. Vil asked if it was edible, as there were many poisonous fruits out in the wild. Rin claimed that survival had given the verdict that it wasn't poisonous and was rather tasty. With that, Vil decided to go grab them. He leapt from the ground at immense speed, leaving Rin pleading for him to wait. However, Vil didn't stop and he kept on jumping. Rin stood there, amazed, thinking that Vil was super athletic. However, she couldn't let herself fall behind, so she stretched her muscles. In the past, she was an expert in climbing trees and riverside dunes, jumping over barns and sliding on handrails. She was a Spitfire who earned the label Wild attached to her name in childhood. As long as she used those instincts, climbing the cliff shouldn't pose any difficulty. Rin got into action, desperately trying to climb the cliff as hard as she could. She kept trying, yet she made very slow progress. As she wallowed in pity, Vil asked if she was okay. Rin only cried as she continued climbing, thinking to herself that she only needed to go a bit more. When she finally got to the top, she kneeled down in exhaustion, apologizing to Vil for all the trouble. In the end, Vil had to help her up the cliff. She felt like climbing cliffs used to be way easier, which only meant that she had gained weight, not her going from Tarzan to Tired-zan real quick. She frantically apologized to Vil as she may have been too heavy for him. She asked if his arms were okay and if he felt any pain anywhere. Vil, on the other hand, only asked what was up with her because his arm didn't hurt at all. Rin took a look at his arm, and as she judged the current situation, she observed that there didn't seem to be any pressure, pain, or fatigue. There were no signs of inflammation either. Just then, Vil told her that 1 or 2 of her wasn't a big deal for him, and she could even put on more weight. Rin was befuddled, knowing that if she got any heavier, she would become a snowman. She irritatingly said that she didn't know how to reply to his statement. Then she cursed Vil and his ripped muscles, pointing out that his muscle fibers were young and not swollen. She grabbed them, making Vil yelp in pain. Vil screamed that it hurt, and he worriedly asked what she was even doing. Based on his reaction, Rin realized that it had accumulated a lot of pain, and she guessed it was because of his work. She took the initiative to massage Vil's arm, surprising him. After that, she suggested setting up for the harvest. Vil stuttered as he agreed, and he couldn't help but notice how light his arms had become. As Rin kneeled down to begin harvesting, she noticed that a nearby area had been mowed or cut. As she looked closer, there was a lot of space between the trees, and the sunlight even hit the ground. Just then, Rin called out to Vil, asking if people periodically dropped by the area. Vil confirmed it, adding that the place was abundant in fauna. Merchants who used the highway nearby sometimes entered the woods to gather fruits and herbs. Every few months, the guild would dispatch adventurers and lumberjacks to maintain the outgrowth. Rin asked if adventurers were included, but Vil only shared that wild animals and monsters appeared, so the highway was kept safe with regular sweeps of the area. This made Rin a bit relieved. She recalled that in her previous world, one could hear news of people getting attacked by wild bears and boars in the mountains. After that, she decided to start picking fruits, which she planned to make snacks out of. After all, the forest's blessings were for everyone. However, in the middle of her work, she noticed Vil eating the fruit, and she warned him not to do that. Vil mentioned that she was also taking small bites for herself, and so Rin only smiled awkwardly, realizing that she had been found out. It was so hard to resist because even though they were picking them, they were so easy to nibble on while doing so. The thick juice oozed out the moment she popped it in her mouth. It also had an acidic aftertaste, and she could keep eating them endlessly. It felt very similar to the mulberries from her previous world. Just then, she noticed that Vil made a horrible facial expression, and she guessed he got a very sour one. Rin then asked Vil if he knew that the area around his lips was in a dire situation. He seemed clueless, so Rin took it upon herself to wipe him clean. Rin was shocked in the middle of doing it, mentally asking herself what she had done. She was too used to wiping patients' faces after their meals that her hands moved on their own. Still, the color wasn't fading from Vil's face, and she apologized for it. Vil quickly used his magic to clean himself up, and with a simple snap of his finger, he sparkled like a diamond. Rin was surprised that he became sparkly, and she asked what magic this was. Vil explained that it was one of the livelihood magic arts, and it was very convenient for adventurers who couldn't take regular baths or do their laundry while on missions. Rin thought it was unfitting for her age, but Vil couldn't blame her for being excited. Even their own bodies, which were starting to get drenched in sweat, could be as spotless as if they had just taken a shower. Rin exclaimed that it was amazing and that the magic was so awesome. She jumped around, still enamored by how fantastic it was. However, she quickly went back to work when she noticed Vil looking at her weirdly. At the end of the day, she was a human who didn't act as calm as her age. She was a lost cause who would never graduate from being a child, no matter how old she got. Not long after, she filled the bag with berries. She kept eating them without paying any heed. It just couldn't be helped that her fingers were all purple now. It was a small price to pay for being able to sample such delicacies. After that, she walked towards Vil, asking if they should pick more berries. Just then, Vil's gaze sharpened, and he locked Rin in a protective embrace. Rin was shocked, and as she tried to make sense of things, she saw a monster. a phantom owl that dwelled in mountainous regions, known to attack humans occasionally. Rin wasn't driven by any kind of survival strategy. Rather, her instincts told her to flee for her survival. As she experienced true fear for the first time, she trembled, unable to believe that she had been living on the brink of death all this time. She anxiously called out to Vil, telling him there was a monster. He told her that she needed to calm down, reassuring her that it didn't pose any danger to them. He gave her some pats on the shoulder, telling her he was right there and that there was nothing for her to be afraid of. Rin silently cried, mentally cursing at the situation. Though she had been struggling to keep her composure this whole time, she still broke down. She had to pull herself together, knowing this was the worst moment for her to panic. As the phantom owls threatened them, Rin told herself that she first had to get past being in peril. She couldn't just keep enjoying some mountain sightseeing tour while the others were fighting for their lives. With that, she opened her eyes wide, forcing herself to face her fears. To her surprise, some information about the phantom owls appeared. These bird-type monsters dwelled in the mountainous regions and they lived while shuffling between the ground and shrubs. Their meat was sweet and fragrant, owing to a light diet that consisted of fruits and nuts. Their eggs were also edible. Phantom owls were known to be aggressive in nature and they would sometimes attack humans. However, they were easy to handle unless in huge numbers. Rin was surprised that she could read all of this. Until moments ago, she could only read part of the explanation, but now it was completely legible. After a closer look, she did feel somewhat apprehensive, but on the bright side, it seemed much less formidable now. Just then, she noticed that the text said that these monsters were easy to handle. Rin thought that a complete amateur like her probably couldn't do much. It was times like those that she needed to remain calm and composed. She had some self-reflection to do. Just then, she apologized to Vil and she told him that she had calmed down now. Vil remained quiet, but then his grip tightened. Rin started to panic, noticing that this was a bit too much for an unpopular woman with a romance T-score of the lowest grade. Suddenly, Rin gasped loudly, warning Vil that the phantom owls were fast approaching. Vil's gaze turned towards the monsters. Then, without hesitation, he slashed them in half. As blood splattered, Rin was in awe at Vil's skills. The impending danger had vanished instantly. Rin fell to the ground without saying a word, but Vil understood, knowing that it was her first time seeing a monster and being attacked by one. It was scary, but he reassured her that everything was all right now. Rin looked up at Vil, uttering his name and breaking down in tears. She apologized for the inconvenience and she slightly got depressed over it. To make her feel better, Vil cleaned her up with his magic. Rin then looked at her bag, noticing that the only sacrifice was a few halberries at the bottom of the bag. Rin was stunned that she instinctively guarded the food even in a dire situation. She couldn't believe how much of a gluttonous person she was. Just then, she noticed a package right next to the phantom owl's carcass. She asked what it was, making Vil realize that she didn't know yet. He then explained that after eliminating monsters, they would get drops. The guild sometimes handed out quests for collecting materials. Alchemists could then use these materials in their original form and create items suited for battle. Rin was amazed, seeing how it was conveniently wrapped in a thin wooden sheet. Just then, Vil started to drool, thinking that it sure looked tasty. Rin had already guessed that he was famished, and his growling stomach confirmed it. Rin realized that terms like materials and drops really highlighted the fact that this was an RPG or TRPG world. They could use the phantom owl's feathers to manufacture armor or decorate clothes, whereas the beak and nails could be used as ingredients for different potions. She concluded that demand was pretty high. Therefore, it was best if they fully wrapped it up in a plastic bag. Even the material's properties sounded a bit otherworldly. Just then, Rin noticed something peeking out of the bushes nearby. She checked it out and discovered some freshly laid eggs from phantom owls. Fresh ones may also be consumed raw. Although slightly small in size, they had a high nutritional value and a rich, dense flavor. Breaking their shells required a special technique due to their hardness. When Rin realized that they were freshly laid, it pained her to inform the eggs that their parents had already become a pack of meat. Therefore, she planned to consume the eggs as well. She would do her best to draw out the finest flavor from their meat. Sis really said her parents are nuggets, guess your next omelet edition. With that, she took the eggs to Vil, asking him to wash them with his magic. Vil acknowledged that the eggs were a great find, but he wondered why there was a need to wash them. Rin replied that it was to clean the filth from their shells, as it wasn't just garbage and dirt that may have possibly been stuck on them. She asked if Vil knew what she meant, and she hinted that the eggs were freshly laid, so if he thought about it, birds excrete and lay eggs via the same hole. In a split second, Vil cleaned the eggs in Rin's hands as well, but just to be safe, she planned to wash them again later. Still, she thought they were way too fortunate to have found eggs. Her cooking repertoire had already expanded, and her stomach growled at the thought of it. Just then, Vil politely informed her that his stomach was growling louder. Rin guessed it was time to promptly use the eggs to make snacks. She wanted to make berry cookies which weren't familiar to Vil. She then explained to him that it was a type of baked confection, and she was going to make them using halberries, so they would probably turn out sweet and tasty. Vil drooled, saying that it sounded awesome. Rin had yet to taste any sweets after being dropped there. In a livelihood of constant nervousness, sweets really were indispensable. She was excited to create her first baked sweets made by using otherworldly ingredients, and she wondered how they would turn out. Just then, she summoned the camper van, and it promptly fell from the heavens. She informed Vil that she would set him up for boarding, which confused him. Suddenly, she asked him if he would believe her if she told him that he could enter that thing and move it. As expected, Vil only looked at her, confused. He was completely dumbfounded, which was new to Rin. Vil observed the camper van, skeptical that it could move. Meanwhile, Rin acknowledged that it was pretty unbelievable if she just said it out of nowhere. Vil asked if it worked using magic, but Rin only apologized because she didn't know how it worked in detail. Apparently, it absorbed that thing called magicules to move, but it was unclear whether the vehicle acted as a substitute for gasoline or directly used it for magical propulsion. However, she ultimately decided that none of that mattered as long as it moved. Just then, Rin told the van to let Vil on. The van didn't react to it, and she thought nothing had changed in particular, so maybe it was fine. Talking while standing was a bit inconvenient, so she urged Vil to enter. Vil was surprised to even know that they could enter it. With that, he slowly went inside, and he was restless, trying to look at everything. Meanwhile, Rin observed him from outside, thinking his apprehension was palpable. She followed him inside, and later on she concluded that curiosity got the better of him. She guessed that adventurers did give the impression of being curious and brave, while at the same time being vigilant and careful. Without ample inquisitiveness and courage, one couldn't really go on adventures. Meanwhile, attentiveness and trepidation were essential in protecting one's life. Vil kept on observing every nook and cranny, making Rin smile. After that, she went on to do some baking. On occasion, she wanted to forget all about calories. She just wanted to bake some berry cookies and spicy ginger cookies. In the world of sweets, where proportions needed to be extremely accurate, cookies were the good kids that turned out delicious even if one didn't get the proportions correct. Since there was a digital weighing scale, she would happily put it to good use. Even if there wasn't one, a 2:1 ratio of flour, sugar, and butter would have done the job as well. And as she had the eggs with her, she would make some drop cookies. And so she began baking. First, she washed around 2 handfuls of halberries in water. She then set aside 2 bowls, each containing a mixture of 100 grams of sugar and 100 grams of flour. She added ginger powder, cardamom, allspice, nutmeg, and some cinnamon to one of them. Next, she took some butter with a spoon and put it into a bowl. Just then, Rin was put to a halt when she noticed that the butter she was using had been refilled again. She found the self-refilling barley tea jar kinda strange too, but the rice bottle also filled itself up after she used around half of it for breakfast that day. This made her wonder what was up with all this, and she guessed that it was the boon of the mysterious particle called magicules as well. She thought about how convenient this camper van's kitchen was, and she wanted to shout that at the top of her lungs if only Vil wasn't there. She stopped herself from doing that and went back to work. Just then, she noticed that the oven was done preheating. She placed some butter inside the oven while it was preheating, which would make the end product somewhat softer in texture. She made sure that the butter didn't cool down and harden, but still, it was a useful technique. As she placed a bowl inside, she reminded herself to be careful about burning herself. After that, she kept mixing the butter with small amounts of sugar until it turned into a white creamy emulsion, all while letting air mix with it. She was pretty sure that if she did that step properly, she could get that perfect crunchy mixture. At least that was her conjecture. Just then, Vil observed her, noticing that she was using a pretty weird apparatus. He was amazed at Rin's proficiency with it. Rin explained that it was actually a very common tool from her previous world, and even he could do it that much if he got used to it. As Rin tapped the whisk, some batter splattered onto Vil's hand. She apologized for it, but Vil only licked it with his tongue. He noticed it was sweet, so Rin explained to him that it was butter and sugar. This made her ask if he hated sweets, but Vil said he didn't. Rin was relieved as butter and sugar were both calorie heavy, which made them filling. She changed her mind about it being filling, but at least they had some weight. Next, Rin cracked the eggs, and their shiny orange color excited her. Her eyes sparkled as they looked like the best eggs ever. Vil continued to observe while Rin made sure that her mixture didn't coagulate. As she was dividing them into halves using the spatula, she noticed that Vil was staring at her work with drool dripping from his mouth. Just then, she asked Vil to drain the moisture from the halberries, which he accomplished right away. Rin thought that Vil was looking pretty idle, so she guessed she would have to help him out. She believed that if someone's hands were unoccupied in the kitchen, then she would put them to work, even if they were her parents. That was the motto of the Takanashi household. In the meantime, she prepared the dough for the other type. She started by sifting the finer flour into the bowl and then mixed it all so that the flour would become less powdery. Suddenly, Vil informed her that he was done with the halberries. Rin now mixed the halberries as lightly as possible so that they wouldn't get crushed. And with that, the dough was complete and she put it straight into the oven. Rin and Vil waited right by the oven, watching over the cookies as they expanded. Vil, who had never seen it before, drooled as he observed. Rin thought it was really fun to watch sweets being baked. She remembered how she loved watching her mom bake her cookies and cakes in her childhood. After that, they waited for the cookies to finish baking and they waited patiently as if it was a quest. Not long after, Rin announced that she would be opening the oven now. As the oven's door creaked open, the toasty and glorious smell wafted in the air. It was the sweet and sour fragrance of the cooked berries. Despite the cookies being hot, Vil asked if it was alright to eat them. Rin told him that they should wait a little bit more, much to Vil's disappointment. He suddenly crashed out, wondering why Rin wanted him to wait when he was in the midst of the wafting, tantalizing aroma. He was literally looking directly at the source. He kneeled down in despair, panicking. He was ready to sell his soul to Satan for a Chips Ahoy speedrun. Rin stared at him for a while, then she yielded and said they could now eat. She handed the plate to Vil and he politely took one to taste. Upon eating it, Vil exclaimed that it was very good. Rin had some too, thinking that it was definitely hard to resist the temptation of eating a freshly baked cookie. She took a bite and she immediately noticed its fluffy texture. The eggs softened the inner texture, making it more fluffy. The edges were firmly baked and it felt like cookies. Instead of drying up her mouth, the fruity halberry juices accentuated the taste. Both the sweet and sour parts left a clear aftertaste, stimulating all the taste buds at once. Every time she took a bite, it tasted divine. And so, Rin and Vil were in their own worlds, relishing the crunchy cookies. Suddenly, Rin realized that she wanted coffee with it. The smell made her want to drink some coffee, but she wasn't sure if it existed in their world. Regardless, she was glad it turned out good. Although the disadvantage of this type was its use of raw halberries, and so they wouldn't last long. Just then, as she reached out to take another cookie, she was greeted by an empty plate. Vil had eaten them all, and he reasoned that it was just too delicious and that he couldn't stop eating. Because of that, Rin resolved to set aside some ginger spice cookies for herself the next time she would bake snacks. He just inhaled those cookies like Kirby on crack. As Rin baked a new batch of cookies, she asked Vil if he could tell her about this world. She wanted to know more about his side of things. After that, they sat down to discuss things in detail. Vil explained that this world was called Exiled, which was somewhat a larger version of an island nation. According to Vil, Rin learned that Exiled was surrounded by the sea, so there was not a lot of contact with exotic species, and there were also species like the ogre dragons, who had evolved in their own unique way. To top it all off, long ago, elves and dwarves ran away from the overwhelming numbers of humans pursuing them in other lands. Humans who fell in love with them came to Exiled, and the country became a place where various races coexisted. In the past, it was an uninhabited land where monsters roamed. The first time Vil saw them, they treated him as if he were one of them. Gradually, the impression of non-human races changed. Now they trade with many countries. Rin was amazed to hear all of this, and she instinctively stared out the window to observe all its glory. She smiled back at Vil, telling him that she had it all memorized. Just then, Vil took out a map, demonstrating the town of Exiled. It was one of the largest cities on the continent, and it was home to many non-human species. It was known to be a port town by the sea where various races and products gathered. It was a city of trade. That was what Vil liked to call it. Adventurers gathered there too. More people meant more jobs and also more information. Rin nodded as he explained, thinking that she had learned a little more about this country thanks to him. She then thought about how Exiled was a port city with various goods for sale, which indicated that trade was bustling. Just then, she asked Vil if he knew where she could get any of those caffeine things. She described it as a drink made from red, bitter beans and leaves that have been roasted, crushed, and boiled. From what she was saying, Vil guessed that she was talking about coffee. He was sure there was a store that sold it, along with the incense tea. Rin's eyes lit up when he mentioned tea, but Vil warned her that it was a bit more expensive because it was from the south. However, Rin wasn't listening, as she was fixated on imported goods that had a fancy and refined look. With that, she decided to save up for her civilized diet. Until then, she would be looking for some halberry leaves or something. She would just have to settle for a blend of herbal teas made from wildflowers that grew around the area. Each one was unique, but if she mixed them together, the individuality would dissipate. Just then, she asked Vil about how long it would take to get to the town of Exiled from where they were. Vil explained that it would take about 3 days on foot, but it would be faster if they used a horse. Rin was surprised that it was going to take quite a bit of time, but then again, Vil mentioned that it was on foot. Assuming that one could move at 4 kilometers per h for 8 hours a day with breaks, she did the math and calculated that the distance was about 96 kilometers. With that, she excitedly told Vil that a camp vehicle could get them there in a little over 3 hours. Vil's jaw met the floor, unable to believe how quick it was. Rin came to Elage without any problems from the place she got sent flying to, even at a breezy pace. The road to the village was not paved, but it was well trodden. If it were a meadow with short grass, they could drive at the usual speed. If the road conditions improved, they might even get there sooner. Just then, the oven's timer went off, reminding her that she had just baked them some cookies. If they departed at that moment, they would arrive there while the sun was still bright. Rin quickly exited the van, so Vil called out to her asking where she was going. She replied that she was heading to the driver's seat because she couldn't drive from the cabin, which confused Vil. Meanwhile, Rin took one last look at the lake, breathing in the fresh air before saying she was finally ready. With that, Rin and Vil set off for Elage. As Vil sat in the passenger seat, the look of irritation was evident on his face. Bro looks ready to drop a Yelp review. Rin smiled at him awkwardly, then he complained about having to put the seatbelt on so tightly. If he kept on with it, he wouldn't be able to move fast enough if they got attacked by a monster or bandit. Rin understood his concern, but she thought it would conceal him from the enemy. Vil tried to argue, but Rin continued, saying that if Vil was scared of the monsters, he should be equally afraid of crashes, accidents, and whatnot. She heard it was a terrible shock. Besides, the camp vehicle had a magical warding effect, and she didn't think any monsters would come inside. Vil only made a humming sound, acknowledging her words. Rin was sure that Vil was worried, since this was a new experience for him. With that, she decided it was time to show off her golden license. Rin announced it was time for them to go, making Vil a tad bit anxious. He hoped they wouldn't run over any monsters, beasts, or something of the sort. In the middle of their journey, Vil was starstruck by the beautiful view. He was picturing a big throne, but the passenger seat was nothing compared to that. Rin only kept driving, asking if it was really that different. Vil had never felt a cushion that good before, but the shaking was terrible. The carriage itself made him think that his ass would split in 4 just riding it. He didn't suppose there was any suspension or anything. Rin was not sure if she would ever get the chance to ride a horse-drawn carriage, but that story made her afraid to ride one. As she kept driving, Vil kept on exploring every corner close to him. She remarked that they were going very fast. They were already on the main road. Vil agreed, mentioning that this was the road that connected Kingsland to the rest of the country. Rin noticed that the main road was like a bypass. The road's condition was probably related to its importance. She would say that Elage was in a strategic location, which made sense because it was a trading center. Later on, Rin noticed that more carriages were approaching. Vil noticed too, and he told Rin that it was a sign that they were getting closer to Elage. As Rin kept driving, she started to wonder if this was a bit dangerous. There weren't too many yet, so she could avoid them. However, if there were more of them, they would be stuck in the middle of nowhere. If the camp vehicle was visible to others, they would avoid it, but they couldn't see it. It wouldn't be surprising if that horse-drawn carriage changed course and ran into them. Or maybe a traveler could suddenly jump in front of them. Accident or no accident, Rin didn't want to go on a brutal trip like that. She didn't need more stress in her life. Just then, Vil called out to her, telling her that he had a suggestion. He thought it might be better to get off shortly before they reached Elage, and they could just walk from there. Rin agreed, as she didn't know if they were going to have an accident. People not being able to see the vehicle was also a problem. Vil said it was too risky to expose the vehicle in public, so they just had to make do with what they could. Rin guessed they would just have to get out of the car to enter the town. If people suddenly saw them coming out of an empty space, there would be a commotion. But even if it became visible, that would also be a problem. She could only see a future where there would be a fuss about what it was, who did it, and what the specs were. Just then, she spotted the side of the road where they could drive along. It wasn't paved, yet she set her sights on it. She told Vil to hold on tight, prompting him to ask what she meant. Just then, she twisted the steering wheel as hard as she could, hoping it was okay to go that way. I guess Vil's seatbelt came in handy. Rin and Vil had finally arrived at the port town of Elage. Rin stood before the entrance, amazed by its incredibly high walls. Vil asked if she was okay, as her mouth was wide open. She didn't respond, so Vil took it upon himself to shut her mouth. Rin's jaw dropped so hard it got its own side quest. Rin thought it was just like the fortress cities she had seen in video games and cartoons. Everything in front of her was a huge wall, and it was just like a fantasy. Just then, Vil told her to pay attention, urging her to get moving. Rin asked where they were going, and Vil replied that they should go to the place where they were staying, which wasn't too far. Rin said it was fine if he wanted to go, but she wondered what was going on and what the process was for getting in. Vil replied that they had just finished that, and he urged her to get out of the bustling place. As Rin followed Vil, she realized that the procedure was over while she was looking at the walls. Usually, in a nation like that, one would have to show an ID. If you didn't have an ID, you would have to pay to get a temporary one or something like that. You could also go through a status check at the gate to get an ID. Just then, Vil stopped walking and looked at Rin with a serious expression. He took her hand, telling her that he would show her around town later. For now, they should go to their destination first. If he let Rin walk around town by herself, she wouldn't get there anytime soon. Rin told him to go, and she apologized for causing him trouble. Vil explained that he didn't find her annoying at all. She had been gazing off in the distance for quite some time now, so he thought she might have lost it. Rin explained that it was just that she had never seen anything like it, and it was so rare. Rin apologized to Vil if he felt bothered by it. It was just that she kept getting distracted by all the unusual things she was seeing. There were canals and waterways that flowed into the harbor, and the beautiful streets overflowed with an exotic atmosphere. Other than that, most of the people they passed looked like elves or dwarves. Some had ears and tails, while some had scales. She didn't mean to be rude, but she just couldn't get enough of it. She was so excited to see each and every one of them. This was a whole different world, and it was the town of El Lage. Later on, they finally arrived at the house that Vil's party was renting, which looked like a castle. Rin was amazed by its size, and even more so that it was where adventurers hung out. Vil shared that it used to be a rich man's house, but the owner died a strange death, so they had it for rent. Hearing that, Rin wondered if it was called an accidental death. Just then, Vil opened the door and loudly announced that he had returned. Ed and Arya looked at him uninterestingly, while Senyon remarked that Vil had arrived early. Vil then replied that coming much earlier was more important than his estimated dates. Ed whined, hoping to spend more time with Arya, while Arya asked where her souvenirs were. Vil apologized and said he forgot, but he now had a replacement. He then pulled Rin beside him, informing everyone that they wanted someone like her, a baggage handler who could cook. Everyone was stunned, unable to believe the news. Vil shared with everyone that he had been offered a meal, and it was delicious. Vil explained that he brought Rin because he was desperate. Everyone quickly gathered around Rin, making her anxious. Ed thought there was no way, and he couldn't believe that she would actually come. Meanwhile, the rest of the group started crying tears of joy. Rin, on the other hand, could feel her eyes burning from all the stares she was getting. She thought it was crazy, and she hoped they would stop looking at her. She couldn't stand being in a space with all those handsome men and beautiful women. She was starting to feel nervous, and she prayed for them to stop looking at her. Sis walked into a thirst trap cult and didn't get the memo. Just then, Arya held her hands, and she was shocked at how soft they were. She also noticed that her hands were cold, and she wondered if she was sensitive to such temperatures. Arya looked at her longingly, asking her if it was true that she could cook. Arya had a voluptuous figure and a captivating presence, making her the boin boin and bane bane type of alluring lady. They really said her pronouns are boin bane. She embodied the description of being as white as snow or white like snow. She truly was a beauty. Ed was the energetic and cute red-haired handsome guy who had a well-proportioned face. However, due to his ever-changing expressions, he also gave off a slightly youthful vibe. Senyon possessed a beauty that seemed almost artificial, as if he had stepped out of a novel. The distinctive feature of his long ears set him apart. Who would have thought that this stunningly beautiful person would be devouring roasted meat with both hands? He was definitely an elf with a deceptive look. When Rin came to think of it, it was not just Arya. Ed and Senyon seemed to have quite the appetite too. This made her wonder just how much they could eat. Just then, Arya shook her, asking again if she could cook. When Rin was about to answer, Arya asked her more questions, wondering if she could grill meat or fish. Rin replied that she could handle both. She could also prepare them using cooking methods other than grilling. Arya was stunned into silence, yet she looked reassured. Just then, Rin told Arya that if she had room in her stomach, then she would like to make something with meat. She thought it could make for a good appetizer. Suddenly, she fell silent when she noticed that everyone was already staring at her like they were bloodthirsty predators. Arya felt tense, realizing that these people wanted her cooking that much. After that, Rin headed outside where her camper van was parked. She thought it was good that they had space in the garden to summon her vehicle. Just then, Vil asked if that was okay, and she confirmed it. If the party's taste turned out to be different after being accepted as members, it would be a setback for them all. The best way would be to have them taste it firsthand. Vil thought it was right, but he was worried that she was tired. Rin was surprised by his concern, but she reassured him that she was fine. Vil took her word for it, thinking that if she was fine with it, then it would be a wish come true for him too. He then told her to go ahead. Shortly after, Rin took out the grill into the garden. She thought that some people might be worried about poison, so it was better to cook it in a way that could be seen. Everyone was puzzled by her methods, and they were quite worried. This made Rin wonder if something was up, as it seemed like they were seeing something indescribable. She asked if she had done something weird, so Vil explained to her that from an outside perspective it looked like a strange sight. They had just witnessed her figure suddenly disappearing from the empty space, and then she reappeared out of nowhere. Rin was shocked, realizing just how it caused a scene. Since Vil was set up for riding, he was able to see the camping van, which wouldn't evoke any discomfort. However, if someone who didn't know about it saw it, it would look unusual. When Vil explained to them that it only appeared that way due to Rin's skill, they seemed to understand it to some extent. Hearing that, Rin apologized for the trouble. Vil told her not to worry about it, so Rin thanked him, adding that she might consider the location more carefully in the future. She reassured herself that it was okay to make mistakes and that she should just be more careful next time. Rin quickly reminded herself to switch her mindset. She then called out to Vil asking if they had some firewood. He replied that there should be some lying around in the kitchen, then he volunteered to bring it. Shortly after, he returned with a few bundles of firewood and Rin thanked him for it. As Vil prepared it for Rin, he asked what she was going to make. Rin thought of making grilled meat with Phantom Owl's meat, which somehow shocked Vil. Everyone was excited as well, screaming grilled meat. Since it had a sweet and savory taste, Rin thought it would go well with alcohol. First, she prepared the fire. She stacked the thin firewood, considering the airflow on the pit. Then she used a tissue roll as a makeshift fire starter and ignited it. She used the remaining ember in the fire as an extinguishing pot to nurture the flames. Once the fire gained momentum to a certain extent, she started adding firewood. Once the fire was ready, she washed her hands and prepared the ingredients. As she took some Phantom Owl meat, she made sure that it would be enough for 5 people. She then cut the meat into bite-sized pieces, and she mixed it with soy sauce, sugar, cumin, and coriander seeds to let the flavors seep in a bit. She calculated that if the soy sauce was okay, then her rice should be too. That was what she thought. Soy sauce and miso were familiar seasonings for Japanese people, but she heard that some people who were not accustomed to them found such unique flavors challenging. Since it was a teriyaki-like sweet and savory flavor with added sugar, she hoped the resistance would be minimal. Just then, Rin experienced a sense of gratitude knowing that the spice box was in the camping van. It was definitely a lifesaver. She then waited for the meat to marinate, while Vil observed her nearby. Later on, she began making the skewers, thinking that 5 pieces were enough for everyone. The Phantom Owl meat was marinated and seasoned, then she skewered them on barbecue sticks. Once the fire had settled down to some extent, she started grilling. The sizzling fat dripped onto the flames, crackling and bursting. The enticing aroma of soy sauce being seared filled the air, making Vil drool. Arya suddenly approached, complimenting Rin for her amazing work. She touched her lips, saying that the meat smelled very good. Arya was amazed by the delicious aroma, while Ed was excited that the meat was cooking. He couldn't believe that someone in their party could actually cook decently. Meanwhile, Vil kneeled at the prolonged agony of waiting, while Senyon only stood there with the same amount of longing. Senyon was impressed that Rin had handled everything so smoothly, and it was a world of difference compared to Ed and Vil's approach. Vil was baffled at Senyon's audacity to say such things, as he was in no position to say anything. Just then, everyone collectively stared at Rin as if she were some saint. Rin got anxious because if they kept looking at her with those sparkling eyes, she would just feel guilty or apologetic. After all, she was just cutting and grilling meat. Bro, she grilled a bird, not parted the Red Sea. If she had the chance, she wanted to marinate it with grated onions, and when eating, she wanted to add tomatoes and lettuce. Since she didn't have the ingredients, she only had the meat. She started to worry if she really deserved to receive such high praise. She started to get all frantic, wondering if it was really okay. Not long after, the Phantom Owl's sweet and spicy yakitori was finally ready. It was a simple dish, more like grilled meat or yakitori. She then told everyone that if they liked, they were free to have some. Everyone's eyes sparkled with awe and they gladly took one for themselves. Vil acted nonchalantly, apologizing to Rin for the group's behavior. However, his act quickly faded as he grabbed a skewer for himself. As everyone took a bite, Rin stood there waiting for their reaction. Arya and Ed thought it was delicious and they were amazed at how Rin was able to make it in no time. Meanwhile, Senyon silently ate at a nearby bench, relishing the skewer. While displaying very refined manners, he was devouring it with tremendous speed. Just then, Ed poured some booze for himself. Then he kept eating. Despite the skewer being hot, he kept on digging in, making everyone around him concerned. After a while, he screamed that the food was delicious. He noticed that Rin was looking at him weirdly, so he gave her a little thumbs up. Judging from the unstoppable eating and the radiant expression, it felt pleasantly satisfying to Rin. It had a better outcome than she expected, which made her glad. At least it didn't seem like it didn't suit their taste, so she was relieved. Now that the tension was gone, she decided it was time for her to eat too. As she took a bite, she was overwhelmed with surprise. It was freshly caught meat, so she thought it might be tough, but it wasn't at all. Thanks to the spices, there was not even a hint of gaminess, just the meat juices infused with the sweetness of sugar dripping as she chewed. She went on to eat everything until there was nothing left. She was a bit disappointed to know that she ate it all more easily than she thought. I think Vil is more disappointed that she didn't leave him any. Suddenly, Rin was shocked when Arya suddenly hugged her from behind, telling her that she loved it. She freaked out since she could feel Arya's enormous chest hitting her right on. Seemingly oblivious to Rin's dilemma, Arya snuggled her head onto Rin's neck. Rin quivered, prompting Vil to voice out his concern for her. Rin thought Arya smelled nice too and she was very soft. Rin just couldn't resist. Rin got hit with the forbidden pillow combo. Just then, Rin broke off from the hug but Arya held onto her hands. She then told Rin that she was looking forward to the next meal from now on. Ed did too while Senyon complimented the grilled meat. Hearing all that, Rin guessed that this meant she passed the test. Just then, Vil turned to her, asking if they should go inside and introduce themselves. Rin was surprised while everyone else agreed to Vil's plan. Rin introduced herself to the team and she told them that she had been recruited as a cook. She promised to do her best, so she asked the others to take care of her. Just then, Arya introduced herself, highlighting that she liked her meat rare and that she liked sweet things. Ed told Rin that it was nice to meet her and he said he was fine with anything, be it meat, fish, or vegetables. Senyon introduced himself next and he told Rin it was nice to meet her. He complimented Rin for the grilled meat earlier, though he had already said that for the second time. Why they all acting like she's taking orders at a restaurant? Rin knew that self-introductions are the basics of building relationships, so she tried to greet everyone. However, she didn't expect to get food preferences in return. This made her think that they had high expectations, so she must do her best. Just then, Senyon called out to Vil, informing him that he had received a request for tomorrow's task. He asked if Vil would join him, and he specified that it was a gathering request in the nearby forest. Vil thought about it for a bit, then he agreed to join Senyon. However, he mentioned that if they were going outside the main gate, then Rin would need an identification card. Now that Rin heard that, she realized he was right. She didn't have any official identification or anything. This made her frantic. As she didn't have any form of ID, it would be difficult to enter anywhere if she went out like that. Vil said that it would be better to have the guild issue an ID card now, and it should be open. Arya asked if they were leaving early, and she suggested registering before tomorrow's departure. However, Senyon argued that it was better to do it earlier. In Vil's case, if they waited until tomorrow, there would be a possibility of forgetting it in haste. Ed agreed, especially if they got engrossed in delicious food. Meanwhile, Rin thought it could be quite harsh depending on how one would hear it. Vil, on the other hand, wasn't bothered at all. Just then, Senyon told the others to meet at the main gate at 6 o'clock. Since they wouldn't be encountering strong enemies, the equipment didn't need to be extravagant. After all, sharing important information was crucial. Hearing all that, Rin realized that from the meeting and destination to the mission details and precautions, Senyon seemed quite competent, as he could handle everything without being told. She started gushing at the sight of Senyon, thinking that he was handsome and capable. She wondered what was up with that, as it seemed unfair. She thought it was too much to have it all. Then, out of nowhere, Ed hugged Arya. He was looking forward to seeing her again tomorrow, but Arya only cared about the meal she would have. Meanwhile, Rin fangirled at the couple, thinking that the beauty of a handsome man and a beautiful woman was picturesque. Then, to Rin's surprise, Vil held out his hand to her, asking her to go with him. She took Vil's hand and she went with him, all dazed. She wondered somehow that she could feel everyone in the party giving her lukewarm gazes. It was to prevent her from getting lost, as it didn't seem like Vil had any ulterior motives. Later on, Vil and Rin reached the town. She tried to keep up with Vil's pace, but she soon ran out of breath. She started to complain to herself, realizing just how different people with long legs are. Bro's walking like it's a Nike ad and she's in a survival arc. Vil apologized for being in a hurry, but Rin argued that it couldn't be helped. Vil didn't consider her pace, so it was his mistake that he was sorry for. Still, Rin protested, and she thanked Vil for his kindness. However, at the back of Rin's head, she knew this wasn't good. Aside from being on cooking duty, carrying luggage meant they had to walk quite a distance with everyone. She really needed to build up her stamina, and she should take exercise more seriously. Now that she thought about it, she asked Vil how they managed to pass through the main gate that day. Vil explained that he showed his identification card and said that there was someone who wanted to become an adventurer. That was how they got in. That was why it was important to make an adventurer's card as soon as possible. It would be troublesome otherwise. At that moment, Rin realized that if she caused any problems, Vil would also face some kind of penalty. So he acted as her guarantor. She guessed that was why he asked, "You said you wanted to be an adventurer, but you haven't signed up yet." Thinking about that, Rin realized that she needed to hurry. For now, Vil planned to present Rin as an ordinary person who came from a distant place. Rin left the matter to Vil as she didn't know about this world or how to communicate. Since Rin ended up alone, she might just use her skills for carrying luggage and embarking on a journey with Vil. They would use that story, though it was quite a heavy one. She was now convinced about using the summoned as a saint from another world narrative, which was much better than telling the truth. Just then, she asked Vil how to register at the guild. He answered that they would use truth verification magic, making Rin curious. According to Vil, they didn't have something like a status check that was done in manga or something similar. It seemed like they preferred performing a truth verification instead. This is a magic used for the documents required to make an adventurer's card and the applicants themselves, and it determines whether what is written is true or false. Even if someone else writes the documents, it can accurately perform the verification. It is a high-performance tool. Rin finally made sense of everything, and she finally understood why it became such a setting and place. The fact that she came from a distant place, and the fact that she thought of utilizing her skills for carrying baggage were not lies either. After all, she came from another world and she became separated from both her family and friends. Besides, the camp RV could also carry luggage. This made Rin stare at Vil, and she remarked that he had prepared well. Later that day, Rin and Vil headed to the Adventurers Guild. Rin's eyes sparkled as soon as she saw the interior, as it glistened in all its glory. Just then, a white dog dressed in a maid's uniform approached Vil, asking him if he was there for something related to the Adventurers Guild. Vil recalled that the dog's name was Sheila, and he told her that he wanted to request a new registration. Meanwhile, Rin was surprised to see a dog dressed like Sheila. Vil then explained to her that Sheila was a kobold, and he asked if it was her first time seeing one. Rin explained that she knew it only in fiction, like in stories. Just then, Sheila smiled at Rin, making her heart flutter. After that, Sheila told them to fill out the application form at a nearby table. However, Rin didn't understand the characters on it, so she thought it was best to ask Vil for help. To Rin's shock, she realized she could read its content and she could even write it. Even though it was a series of characters she had never seen before, she understood the meaning. It should be written in Japanese, but there were mysterious strings of characters written. At that moment, Rin realized that it was amazingly scary. Bro, she just unlocked Duolingo on nightmare mode. Suddenly, Sheila approached, asking Rin if she had finished filling out the form. She then took a stool to help her reach the table, and she reviewed Rin's application. After a while, she said that there were no omissions on the form, so she would take it. She then led Rin to another area, directing her to place her hand on top of the application form. It was now time to perform the verification. Sheila cast some sort of spell which made Rin feel giddy because Sheila was too cute. Sensing that she may be a bit stunned, Vil reminded her not to let go of her hand. Just then, the application form glowed and a slight gush of wind blew over her. After that, Sheila announced that the truth verification was finished. Since there were no lies, she would register Rin as a baggage carrier. She was glad to help a newcomer again after a while, and since Vil and the others were good people, she really hoped Rin would do her best. Rin promised to do so, and she thanked Sheila. Later that day, Rin finally received her adventurer card. She was amazed to see a thin metal plate with her name and simple status. In her case, she was a baggage carrier, and the name of the guild she registered with was written on the card. She could still read it and write it, but before that, she didn't know the characters. She realized that she might have to check her sanity after such an extraordinary experience. However, she won't do that. Just then, she noticed that there was a piece of paper stuck behind her card. She then recalled that Sheila had told her to consult the guild for anything she needed. Rin was touched, as Sheila was such an excellent receptionist who took good care of newcomers. Then to Rin's surprise, Vil informed her that Sheila had been working at the guild for 20 years as a veteran. Kobolds don't change appearances much, and they tend to look a bit childish due to their race. Hearing all that, Rin thought that this world was truly filled with surprises. Suddenly, Vil's stomach growled and he looked at Rin awkwardly. Now that Rin thought about it, besides the skewers they had as a snack substitute, they hadn't eaten anything else. She smiled at Vil, guessing that his stomach was empty. Just then, Vil held her hand, inviting her to eat something while they were in town. He asked her to come with him for a bit, but Rin told him to wait because she didn't have any money. However, Vil told her to consider it a gesture of gratitude for treating him to the feast earlier. On top of that, as the one who cooks, it was better for her to know the taste of dishes made by others. That was just his personal opinion. But if they were eating out, the Wildcat Inn was pretty good. After a while, they finally reached the establishment, and Rin was surprised by how big it was. Vil explained that it was a dining hall, tavern, and inn combined. That was its closest description, and even people other than adventurers often used it. Upon entering the restaurant, Rin's eyes sparkled with glee. Later on, Rin and Vil decided to take a seat. Vil suggested going with the day's recommendation, but he made sure to ask Rin if there was anything she disliked or couldn't eat. Rin confidently said that she didn't have any preferences, so she was okay with most things. Vil was glad to hear that, but then he told Rin that in the business of adventuring, there were times when one had to eat anything to survive. Rin understood, and she could imagine it to some extent. Suddenly, Vil called the waitress. As the waitress walked to them, Vil asked Rin about the drinks that she liked. He suggested that they both have gin, but Rin wanted the fruit water. She did like alcohol, but she was still a bit nervous, so she couldn't afford to have it yet. Once she got used to it, she would try the alcohol from another world. Or rather, she would definitely drink it someday. Later on, the waitress brought them a random fry, and she apologized for making them wait. Rin's eyes sparkled at the sight of the food. It was a fry where anything goes, without any lies. Even though adventurers didn't have money, they could still eat delicious foods because they brought ingredients instead of money for drinks. The tavern could get cheap ingredients, and other customers could eat delicious and affordable food to their heart's content. It was truly a win-win situation. Just then, Rin called out to Vil, telling him that if he really was concerned about the money, she could just cover it for that day. He could then deduct it from tomorrow's reward for the quest. Now, she could eat without worries. She then told Vil to help himself to whatever he liked while it was still hot. Rin chose the curse shrimp, which was like a shrimp and some deep-fried red turnips. She and Vil ate them with the Wildcat Inn's special sauce, a juice from a fruit similar to lemon. It also had some grated rock salt sprinkled on top. Having her first otherworldly dish become her favorite fried dish would be a good start. It was her first time trying cuisine from this world, and she was about to dig in. Her eyes gleamed upon tasting the dish. She loved biting into the fox-colored crust, and it had a slightly rare, plump flesh oozing with shrimp broth. The fragrant aroma of the shrimp wafted through her nose. Though the food was still hot, she took another bite, remarking that fried food was so delicious. The red turnip also had its own sweetness. The outside was crispy, while the inside was tender with the perfect balance of heat. The crispy and crunchy texture was delightful to Rin. Although deep-fried dishes could become greasy, the Wildcat Inn's fry had a lighter batter, and the acidity and refreshing fragrance of the lemon prevented it from feeling oily. It was so good that Rin felt like she could eat it forever. Finally, she gulped it all down and felt the bliss she was expecting. Next was the ultimate bliss, drinking the cold peach fruit water. This was truly what to live for, as it made her feel like she could forget all the worries of that world. Just then, Vil informed Rin that her room for sleeping and staying was vacant, but it lacked bedding. However, Rin told him not to worry, as she would be sleeping in the camping van. Vil was shocked to know that she could sleep inside that car because it was very convenient. Meanwhile, Rin was lost in thought. She expected that the mountain-sized fry was too much for just the two of them, but while they talked, it disappeared in no time. As they finished their meal, Rin recalled everything that happened, from Vil's invitation to meeting the party members and receiving her first adventurer card. Remembering all that, Rin told Vil to do their best on the gathering quest tomorrow. Rin was amazed that she simply had to place her hand on the application form to verify it. Truly, magic was incredible. She gazed at her palm as she thought about this, causing Sheila to ask if she had cut her finger on the paper. Sheila held her hand, and upon seeing the kobold's fluffy hands, Rin fainted from her cuteness. Girl saw one paw and her fight or flight chose collapse. Vil asked what was wrong and if she was okay. Rin felt like her heart had been shot as Sheila was too cute for her. As she continued to freak out, Vil asked if she was okay or if she needed some water. Rin was excited about having new clothes, but she was also devastated because she used Vil's money. She recalled Vil saying that she would definitely stand out with her outfit. However, he also warned her that wearing a cape all the time was going to be tough. And just like that, it became a flow of buying. After shopping for new clothes, Rin thanked Vil and promised to pay him back. She was anxious at the thought of it, so she screamed in Vil's face that she would definitely pay. She thanked Vil again, this time calling him formally. She didn't know if she could pay it off with that request, but she would return the money properly. This time, Senon and the others received a delivery request, which involved collecting items and delivering them to the guild to complete the request. It seemed to be a collection request mission. It looked like the surplus could also be sold to the guild, and there were requests tailored to the level of both beginner and advanced adventurers. Before starting the quest, Vil informed her that once they arrived at the site, everyone should spread out as they saw fit. However, he suggested that it was better for her to team up with him. That was what he said, and so it was done. They were in the forest for the practice of collecting, and it was a little away from El Lage. Finally, the task began, and everyone went to their respective areas. Arya went with Ed, and Senon left on his own. Once they were alone, Rin asked if it was okay to spread out too much. That was what she thought, but there weren't many strong monsters there, so there wasn't much to worry about apparently. In the first place, adventurers frequently entered the forests and woods near El Lage for commissions, so there weren't many strong monsters or groups of magical creatures. But to Rin's surprise, a massive footprint of a large beast was imprinted on the ground below her. She instantly panicked and realized that monsters in the area really did exist. That's not a footprint, that's a foreshadowing. However, those monsters tended to avoid human presence and reside deep within the forest, resulting in fewer opportunities for encounters. If that was the case, she thought it would be fine to take on subjugation requests. However, if Vil, their guard, was absent and they happened to encounter a formidable foe, their front line could be breached. That, or they could lack the firepower to deplete the enemy's health. That seemed to be the decision made. However, she did think that one could never be too cautious when it comes to safety margins. Just then, Vil suggested gathering items for requests and potential exchanges around that area. Upon hearing that, Rin did a little stretching and she planned to start using her survival skills. She also reminded herself to be careful and not stray too far from Vil. With that, they commenced the collection request. As they went through their task, they found some tiratak that he wanted to sell. Vil answered that it could be sold, but it wasn't worth much. Around 100 G, they would only get 5 iron coins. Rin thought about the amount and she asked how much that would be in their world. Vil couldn't quite grasp it because he didn't know the buying price in their world, so he did some thinking. According to Vil, the average price for a one-night stay at a nearby inn was about 2 copper coins. For a light meal, it seemed that one could eat for about 5 iron coins. The currency included iron coins and gold coins, and counting was based on the decimal system. There was also a platinum coin above the gold coin, but it wasn't in circulation much. It seemed they were used only for very large transactions. There was also a lower denomination below the iron coin, such as a small or meager coin called zeni. It appeared that this unofficial money was not officially recognized. So if they gathered 100 G worth of tiratake, they could have a light meal, and if they gathered 400 G, they could stay overnight. Vil finished explaining the whole concept to Rin and she finally understood. G was the unit for weight and M stood for a unit of length. It was kind of similar to Japan in a subtle way, and even the units of time could be easily understood without difficulty. Just then, Vil told Rin that searching for the desired ruby fungus mushrooms would also bring in some extra money if they had leftovers. Rin stuttered and asked if that was so different. Vil explained that if they collected 400 G, they could not only stay overnight, but they could also have a luxurious meal. Rin was stunned upon hearing it and she immediately ran to search for some ruby fungus. Worried, Vil told her not to go too far. After a while, Rin finally found the one that Vil commended, the ruby fungus. It was a high-quality mushroom with a bright red umbrella and a yellow stalk like a ruby. The color and appearance might seem toxic, but in reality it was non-toxic and had a delightful aroma and taste. All of this was reported to her by Survival. Tiratake looked delicious enough, but it had a plain appearance and mild flavor. And when compared to the visually striking and rich-tasting ruby fungus, it lost out in terms of visual impact and intensity of flavor. Just then, Rin spotted another patch of tiratake mushrooms, and she decided to enjoy the low-profit tiratake for herself. She went on and collected a bag full, wondering if there were more. As she walked around, Survival showed her an arrow, directing her where to go. It seemed that consciously using it was very convenient for Survival to search for edible items. It automatically gave her warnings when danger approached, and it also informed her whenever there was food in the vicinity. One of those items was kuroyamogi, an edible plant. It was more commonly treated as a medicinal herb rather than food. The mature ones had tough veins and strong bitterness. Soft, young leaves could be eaten, and they were also used in sweets. It was used as an ingredient for medicinal water and ointments, among other things, and had various applications. Rin shouted in joy, claiming that this was it. She called out to the plant as if it were a person, and dubbed it an acupuncture therapist and the reliable partner of moxa treatment. She couldn't overlook this, so she had to secure it no matter what. She didn't expect to make top-grade moxa, but she should be able to manage at least average to inferior quality ones. It might not be suitable for direct moxibustion, but it seemed usable for indirect moxibustion, warm moxibustion, and even moxa heat pads. Rin was so hyped up that she was suddenly filled with motivation. Since it could be used for sweets as well, she wanted to collect both the young leaves and the mature ones. Elsewhere, Vil was picking mushrooms when Rin suddenly approached him. She asked if they could sell the kuroyamogi, so Vil replied that it was used to make antidotes and medicinal ointments, but it didn't fetch a high price since it grew everywhere and anyone could collect it. Rin was surprised to hear it, and she grew excited because she could use it without any hesitation. With that, she went on to collect as much kuroyamogi as she could. However, before she could continue, Survival gave her a warning sign. Rin quickly got worried, remembering the last time when her life was at stake. Vil quickly protected her, informing her that something was nearby. He told Rin not to worry as he would take care of it. Rin was reassured that everything would be fine because Vil was there. Then, to Rin's surprise, a big frog appeared in front of her. It was a docile demon creature that moved slowly. It was deemed not dangerous as long as it wasn't touched. It can secrete a milky toxin from its ear glands and skin warts, so contact with the skin could cause mild inflammation. Rin was horrified at the sight of it. Though she didn't particularly dislike frogs, she was okay with touching them too. However, its size and emotionless eyes creeped her out. Its eyes said, "I've seen things and you're next." Just then, Rin continued reading the information that Survival was showing, and she found that the frog's flesh was non-toxic after removing the skin. Unfortunately, it was said to be tasteless and not suitable for consumption. Vil then told Rin that the frog didn't taste good, even if it was boiled or grilled. As long as it didn't attack them, he thought it was fine to just ignore it. Considering the effort it would take to defeat it, he didn't want to bother with it. Rin understood and asked if it was because the frog was poisonous. Before Vil could answer, the frog suddenly moved, making Rin tense. However, it merely turned its back on them and left peacefully. Rin instinctively knelt down in relief, as things like that still scared her even though it wasn't very dangerous. Suddenly, Rin recalled that the bird yesterday was classified as a monster, but the frog was called a magical creature. She asked Vil if there was a difference, so he explained that normal creatures with magical powers were called magical creatures. On the other hand, beings that possessed magical power and came with skill-like abilities were called monsters. However, it was probably not that simple. It was like they evolved or changed in that order. Vil didn't know what to call it exactly, but it felt like they had transformed. Magical creatures might not have skills like normal creatures, but they were significantly stronger and larger. Things finally made sense to Rin, and she understood why the milk trout was so big. But Rin quickly changed her mind because in the other world, there were big fish like trout and steelhead too. Big fish existed, but that frog was definitely a magical creature. Just then, Vil informed Rin that the frog could still be nearby, so it would be helpful if she could stay within sight. Rin apologized, and she thanked Vil for warning her. Suddenly, she looked at Vil with puppy eyes, asking if she could gather some more kuroyomogi. Vil stared at her full bag, knowing that the profit margin was small. As Rin got her way, Vil stared at her with a flat look. She could only hope that he would wait for her a little longer, and she would explain why she was harvesting the plant later. For now, she wanted to bask in the joy of being able to do acupuncture. As Rin kept on doing her task, she wondered if there were any acupuncture needles lying around somewhere, like Sun 3, Ichiban Sun 3, Niban Sun 3, Sanban 2 Sun, Sanban 3 Sun, and more. She wished there was a lineup like that. If it were made of all stainless steel, it could be used for moxibustion too. However, Rin felt gloomy when she realized there was no way they were lying around. She was desperate for someone to give her acupuncture. Vil noticed that Rin was stuck in thought, so he checked on her and asked if she was okay. Hearing that, Rin quickly snapped out of it and said she was fine. She got carried away with the excitement of finding kuroyomogi and got caught up in her thoughts. From now on, she reminded herself to be more careful. Just then, she gazed at her watch and realized that it was about time to start preparing for dinner. Since this was the first time she would have a meal with so many people in that world, she thought about taking her time with her preparations. With that, she told Vil that she wanted to make dinner. Vil, on the other hand, was surprised that it was already time for that. He asked if they had enough ingredients, and Rin confirmed it with determination. She added that they also had the meat they received the other day, so they had some ingredients on hand. She believed they could manage with that, and she was already thinking of what to make. Vil asked if they should do the cooking at the meeting point, and Rin agreed. Since Vil had mentioned it, Rin also thought that it was unnecessary to mention that they could ride the camping van that time. Due to his kind words, it would inevitably be an outdoor meal. After that, Rin did some stretching before cooking, and she enjoyed the delicious air while doing so. The sky was high, and it was like having the place all to themselves. If that was the case, she wanted to eat like a picnic. Just then, Rin gazed at the ground below her, realizing that there weren't many exposed patches of soil. With that in mind, she thought it would be better to cook at the campsite. Even though they could have a campfire pit, it would be troublesome if it caused a fire with flying sparks. Using plates and cutlery outdoors would also be troublesome, and it should be something that could be eaten with rice, even without side dishes. Finally, she came up with an idea. For that day's lunch, she would make takikomi gohan, a Japanese-style seasoned rice dish. Rin seemed to be stuck in her own happy world that she didn't realize Vil had no idea what that was. He asked what takikomi gohan was, so Rin explained that it was rice cooked together with ingredients and seasoning. It was like a Western-style seasoned dish. Though he was clueless, Rin noticed that Vil smoothly progressed the conversation without interrupting her humming, which only meant he was a nice person. Now that the menu was decided, it was time to start cooking. A large fish-like monster appeared, and its sheer size was making Rin soak in her sweat. They had received a request to exterminate the monster that appeared near the spring, so they came to the scene. A giant fish-like monster had grown in size and was rampaging, and they needed to somehow defeat it. Not long after, the team had slain the beast, and it was nothing more than slices of meat. Vil asked if it was going to taste good, while Arya commented that it didn't seem very appetizing. As Arya was worried about the meat's squishy texture, Rin told her not to worry. Her skill was saying, "This one tastes delicious." And those types of fish were usually tasty when fried. Arya wondered if it would really taste good, and Rin confirmed it. She told Arya to leave the task to her, making her smile. With that, they started preparing the meal right away. Rin chopped the meat and tossed it in a pot. As she went through her task, Arya suddenly tugged on her jacket, calling out her name. She hesitated to speak, but she said that she did well in the battle. In return, she wanted a reward, and she wanted to have it. Rin panicked at the sight of Arya's pretty face, so she decided to let her taste the tempura, not the tempura being a distraction from her gay awakening. Arya's eyes glistened upon seeing the dish, and she thanked Rin for the wonderful reward. Rin smiled and told her to sprinkle a little salt on it, and she also reminded her that the food was hot, so she should blow on it before eating. Upon taking her first bite, Arya blushed at the overwhelming flavors in her mouth. She remarked that the tempura was delicious, which convinced Rin to have some too. True enough, the white flesh inside the batter had no unpleasant smell, and it had a tender texture. The tender flesh melted in her mouth, spreading an elegant sweetness. Above all, the part of the skin that wasn't particularly appetizing had transformed inside the batter, as if steamed by the heat. It had turned into a chewy and springy texture. They couldn't help but love the rich skin and flesh combined with the savory taste of the batter and the delicate umami of the fish. In no time, it slid down into the depths of their stomachs. Satisfied with the delicious food, Arya and Rin smiled at each other. After that, Rin decided that if there were any leftovers, they could make tempura rice bowls. However, with that amount, it might not seem possible. Arya's eyes widened when she heard that Rin could make tempura rice bowls. Though she had no idea what it was, she knew one thing: it would definitely be delicious. That little reward somehow hyped up Arya, and she was determined to hunt down the monsters that were still lurking around the area. Meanwhile, Rin told Vil that dinner was ready. Vil asked what ingredients they were going to use for the takikomi gohan, and Rin answered that it would be the freshly picked tiratake and some almiraj meat. First, Rin prepared the mushrooms. They say that washing them with water would reduce their fragrance and flavor, but she wanted to remove the dirt from them too. As Rin turned the faucet on, Vil suddenly freaked out. He screamed that water was coming out and was wondering if she made it. Rin understood that it was an unfamiliar sight, and Vil's reaction confirmed it. After that, Rin made sure to wash her hands before cooking. After removing the dirt from the mushrooms, she broke them into suitable sizes by hand. She could have used a knife to cut them, but she felt like the flavor would seep in better from the cross-section, so she preferred doing it that way. While the mushrooms were draining in the sieve, she prepared the almiraj meat. Thanks to the fridge, its freshness hadn't deteriorated at all. She then cut it into bite-sized pieces and massaged them with a mixture of soy sauce and sugar to marinate. After that, she took out some pans, thinking that it was easier to cook the ingredients first for takikomi gohan. Vil wondered if that was so, as he thought it was easier to simmer everything together as is. Rin corrected him and said it was simple. If she put them in raw, they would tend to release moisture, so it was better to drain the moisture and let it sit. The amount of water also mattered. Rin went on to cook the mushrooms until the extract was visible. It was delicious, but when simmered raw, the rice would become watery. Meanwhile, Vil felt like the flavor didn't penetrate well. However, Rin explained that if they drained the moisture like that beforehand, they could cook flavorful rice without it becoming watery. On top of that, the ingredients themselves would be infused with flavor, and it would taste delicious. That was how she would achieve a takikomi gohan that would satisfy all three aspects. Now that it was cooked to a certain extent, she added the marinated almiraj meat into the sauce. The sweet and savory aroma of the simmering soy sauce and sugar mixed with the fragrance of tiratake and the enticing smell of the meat was irresistible and sublime. Once the meat was about 80% cooked, she turned off the heat and let it cool while immersed in the simmering liquid. While that was happening, Rin called Vil, asking if he wanted to try. His saliva was drooling while asking if it was okay, and Rin confirmed it. She also claimed that sneak bites of tasting were a privilege of a cook. Rin took a bite for herself, and as expected, the meat was delicious. The tiratake was even more delicious than expected. Almiraj meat fell under the category of wild meat, but she didn't sense any gamey flavor at all. It was nothing but flavorful. It had a tender and chewy texture, more so than chicken, and with every bite, a hint of sweetness clung to the tongue. Unlike chicken, which could be dry in certain parts, it had an overall moist and smooth mouthfeel. Vil was surprised, though he already knew almiraj meat was delicious. However, when tiratake was prepared like that, it absorbed the flavors and became even more delicious. The tiratake had absorbed the deliciousness of the meat and its own concentrated essence, and despite being underappreciated, it turned out incredibly delicious. The crunchy texture remained even after cooking, and it was incredibly satisfying. Rin was starting to fantasize about the taste of the food being paired with rice. It was both frightening and fascinating. Suddenly, Vil's stomach growled, signaling Rin that she should cook rice right away. After washing the rice, she transferred the contents of the frying pan into a bowl and separated them into broth and ingredients. First, she poured the broth into the washed rice and added water as needed. Because the ingredients released moisture, she added a little less water than the first joint of her finger. It was convenient to remember the water measurement by feel, as it could be used in camping. It came in handy when one had between 1 and 2 cups of leftover rice or when one had an odd amount. That was why she didn't have to measure the amount of rice. She could gauge the water level without measuring. As Rin murmured those facts, Vil asked her who she was talking to. After that, Rin left the rest of the task to the rice cooker. She focused and waited for it to cook, and she even prayed to the rice cooker, telling it that she was relying on it. After that, Rin headed outside, so Vil asked where she was going. Without stopping, she briefly replied that she was going outside for a bit to search. Shortly after, Rin found a bunch of huge leaves. Vil asked if that was what she was looking for, and Rin confirmed it. She thought they could use it as substitute dishes. What she found was a plant called zeramu, which was neither poisonous nor edible. She picked some of them, convinced that they looked like large bamboo leaves. As Rin stepped into the van with the zeramu leaves, Vil asked if he should use his cleaning spell on them. However, Rin rejected the offer because she simply wanted to wash them, therefore keeping their moisture. It was said that having some moisture would prevent rice balls from sticking together, and it would also prevent fat from sticking. Other than that, zeramu could also be used as an ingredient for herbal medicine. After the meal, Rin would dry it and make their own blend of herbal tea. Just then, the rice cooker beeped, making Rin wonder if it was done yet. Suddenly, she had an idea since they had time until the rice was done. They still had some fowl eggs left, so she wanted to make tamagoyaki out of them. She quickly got to work, and Vil commented that she had impressive skills. Rin played it cool, saying that it was just practice. As Rin cooked the eggs, she realized that they had turned out like an omelet. Now she wished she had a square frying pan. Nevertheless, it would taste just the same, so she planned to just go with it. Finally, the rice was done cooking, which excited Rin and Vil. Rin urged Vil to open it, and he followed. To her surprise, the pure white steam, with the sweet aroma of cooked starch and the fragrant scent of heated soy sauce, mingled with a hint of mushroom aroma resembling wood. Rin and Vil's mouths watered as the aroma alone made the dish irresistible. Undoubtedly, it looked delicious. Rin flipped over some of the rice, and she was disappointed to know that some of it had burned. Still, she continued, as all that was left was to mold it into shape. Though it still looked hot, she had to do it. She went on to do the task, suffering under the heat of the rice. Not her thinking third-degree burns are part of the recipe. Vil asked if she was okay or if she needed help, but she rejected the offer. She did appreciate the thought, though. She thought it wouldn't be good to burn the hands of the vanguard, so she couldn't ask for his help with the task. It was hot, but Rin knew that it had to be done while it was in that state. Meanwhile, Vil stared at her curiously, then smiled. Just then, Rin yelped in pain again, causing Vil to ask if she was okay. Meanwhile, the rest of the party returned from the forest. Ed said that they finally did it. They harvested more than they had expected. Arya, on the other hand, was very hungry. Suddenly, Rin spotted them from afar, and she welcomed them back. When she announced that the meal was ready, Senyon, Arya, and Ed immediately rushed toward her. To their delight, Rin had prepared almiraj and tiratake rice balls and some phantom fowl omelet. Arya remarked that it looked delicious, especially now that she was hungry. Ed cried tears of joy, saying it was so nice to have a meal ready when he came back home. Senyon then told Rin that it was truly appreciated, and he genuinely thanked her. Rin was dazed by Senyon's words, which made her recall the saying, "A meeting by a sleeve is a meeting by a lifetime." Rin smiled, and she returned her thanks to Senyon and the others. After that, they planned to eat the food while it was still warm. However, Rin soon realized that it looked like there wasn't enough space for everyone to sit. Ed and Arya, who were sitting under a tree, seemed satisfied. Ed said he was fine, and Arya reassured Rin that she had set up a net around her, so it was okay. With that settled, they began eating. As Ed took his first bite, he was immediately consumed by the flavors. It was definitely soothing on an empty stomach. Senyon remarked that it was an unusual flavor for simmered rice, as he thought it would be more separate and grainy. Rin explained that it could be because the rice wasn't toasted, or maybe it was just a different type of rice. From the looks of Vil and Senyon, Rin guessed that rice was widely available in that world, and it was probably the type of indica rice. In the other world, it accounted for 80% of global rice production, so she believed it was the same there. The rice she had in the camping vehicle's refrigerator was japonica rice. Indica rice is non-sticky and has a fluffy texture, making it suitable for dishes like pilaf or paella. Japonica rice, on the other hand, is sticky and chewy. If she got her hands on indica rice, she would definitely make pilaf. However, she had had enough of her digression, as it was now time to partake as well. Rin quickly unwrapped her bento, chuckling in excitement. Even though she made it and wrapped it herself, the moment she opened it was so exciting. Meanwhile, Vil was drooling over her portion, but Senyon warned him not to do anything funny. As soon as Rin tasted the food, she realized that the more she chewed, the more the umami seeped out. The carefully simmered tiratake had a firm texture that gently clung to the tongue. The mushroom essence was also present. The large pieces of almiraj meat, when bitten into, pushed back against her teeth. And the omelet, with the addition of wild celery, had become a rich, refreshing, and refined flavor. She must say it turned out delicious. On top of that, eating a bento on the great grassy plains was the best. Just then, Rin was put to a halt when Vil suddenly told her that inviting her was the right choice. Rin was flattered, and she thought it was a pleasure to meet his expectations. Vil remarked that the burnt part they had earlier was delicious too, which puzzled Senyon. Senyon urged Vil to explain what he meant, but he only looked guilty. He had finished the freshly burnt part in no time. Senyon asked if he had eaten it without him knowing, but Vil merely said that it was just a taste. Mons said just a taste, but left no survivors. Just then, Ed and Arya joined the group, asking what they were talking about. Elsewhere, deep in the woods, someone was running from an unknown predator. In the midst of their escape, they tripped, falling to the ground. Suddenly, a giant monster loomed over them, eager to eat its prey. Everyone agreed that they had no complaints about the taste of Rin's food. In fact, they were so satisfied that they gave her an unsolicited shoulder massage. However, Vil suddenly said that there was something else other than taste. He hesitated, but finally admitted that the quantity wasn't enough. This man's stomach got no loading screen. Rin was stunned, knowing that she cooked a considerable amount of rice, but it was still not enough. However, it was true. It wasn't enough. Because of that, she promised that next time she would cook more rice and maybe serve soup and side dishes too. In this first quest, Rin learned a lesson. Quantity is important. For now, what she needed to do was distract the hungry party. With that, she told them to raise their hands if they wanted to eat baked sweets for dessert. Not long after, she served delicious sweets to everyone and was relieved to know that it worked out well. She was glad that she brought the spice cookies again. The cookies were almost gone though, but in the end it turned out fine. After that, Senyon informed Vil that they had harvested more than the requested amount, so he suggested returning to town a bit earlier. There was no point in being greedy after all. Vil agreed and he initiated sorting things quickly and heading back. Upon hearing the plan, Rin volunteered to tidy up the area. This time the condition was that they would buy the surplus at the same price as the delivery amount, so it seemed like they would earn quite a bit of money. There was a need for a large quantity in a hurry, and Senyon managed to secure such a good request. Then as Rin cleaned up, a distressed boy asked her for help. The boy pleaded, claiming that there was a fire bear. Vil was alarmed and he quickly came closer to help. The boy was in pain, so Rin asked him if he was okay. Meanwhile, Vil called Senyon and he quickly jumped into action. Senyon used his healing magic to help the boy, and within no time his injury got all better. Rin was surprised to see it up close. Deep wounds usually left scars, but with the healing mechanism none remained. Rin was amazed, though she couldn't help but notice that the boy looked a bit dizzy. She quickly realized that Senyon's powers couldn't heal stamina as well. Vil asked the boy where the fire bear was, and he replied that it was near a tall cedar tree. Worried, Ed announced that it wasn't that deep in that area. This made him wonder why such a big fire bear would appear. Vil promised to explain later as there were more important things. He asked the boy if there were still other people there, and the poor boy replied that his party, his friends, were still stuck there. Vil and the others fell quiet while the boy cried in fear. Rin noticed that everyone's reaction was palpable in the atmosphere. This could only mean that something above the average level had appeared. Moreover, there were still people in that area. Rin could only stay quiet, looking at the boy wallow in despair. Just then, Vil asked how many people were in the party. The boy stopped crying when Vil suddenly shook him to his senses, once again asking how many people were left in that area. Bro said stop crying and hit him with the emotional reboot combo. The boy said 3, 1 fighter, 1 mage, and 1 priest. Their party's name was Lucky Clover, and he pleaded with Vil to help them. Vil understood. Then he looked at the rest of his team, who already knew what was about to unfold. The boy's eyes lit up, and he started to cry again, but this time, in joy. Vil told the boy to go straight to the guild and informed them that Gourmands was heading for the rescue. The boy thanked them with all his heart, exclaiming that he was grateful for their help. He took a quick bow before disappearing into the woods. After that, Vil told Rin that he was counting on her, and with that, everybody got ready to board. Rin summoned the camping van, and her skill shocked everyone. Sis was dropping a whole Airbnb on wheels like it's nothing. They were all stunned except for Vil, who had forgotten to inform everyone that the one he scouted was capable of cooking and carrying luggage. After that, everyone quickly entered the vehicle. As Rin prepared to drive, Vil approached her, apologizing for making her reveal her abilities, though he had promised to keep it a secret. However, Rin told him not to worry about it, as saving lives was their priority. This made her smile, as Vil was always so kind and always took good care of others. Even during that day's collection quest, they agreed to try working together a few times first, and if it didn't work out, they would consider withdrawing and keeping the skills a secret. Despite all that, he felt responsible for everyone being on board. In Rin's head, she told Vil not to worry. In the first place, she became a medical professional because she wanted to help people. Saving lives was her top priority. Rather than hiding her abilities and letting people die, even if it would get exposed, it was much better to save someone's life no matter how she looked at it. And besides, she would regret it to death if she just watched someone die. Even if by some chance it ended up causing trouble, She would hold her head high with confidence and pride. Even if she were about to be taken back to the summoned country, she would escape on the camping vehicle and get away no matter what. Just then, Vil told Rin that if it caused any inconvenience for her, he would protect her with all his strength. Rin told him not to worry about it. First, they had to focus on saving people from Clover. So, they proceeded without saying such things. She knew that Vil's words stemmed from a sense of responsibility, and there was absolutely no ill intention. But still, it was bad for her heart. As she started driving, she stuttered as she asked Vil to guide her on the way. Not long after, they reached the part of the forest where the fire bear was said to reside. Vil informed her that it was about time, and he asked her to open the door while staying on board. Without stopping, Rin confirmed that she could do it. Next, Vil told Arya to make the Clover members step back as soon as she opened the door. Senyon was tasked to start healing right away, while Ed and Vil would hold off the fire bears. Just then, Rin announced that she was about to open the door, prompting the party to get ready for the operation. Meanwhile, the Clovers trembled at the sight of a massive fire bear. As the bear lifted its paw to attack, it was forced to a halt when its hand was suddenly shot. Though the bear was furious, the lucky Clover party was relieved. Vil and the rest stepped forward, informing the Clovers that, in response to a rescue request from his party members, the gourmands would lend a hand. Arya spun webs from her fingers, and in an instant all the members of the lucky Clover party were pulled to safety. Upon bringing them close to her, she warned them to stay back because it was dangerous. Rin, who observed the whole scene, was amazed. It was like throwing a net. Meanwhile, Senyon healed the lucky Clover members, and he called out to God to have mercy on them. He then told the Clovers to rest for a while as he couldn't heal their fatigue. One of the Clovers asked the gourmands who they were, and Arya explained that there was a cat person who asked for help. The priest identified that it was Lento, and he thanked Arya for responding to his plea. One of the Clovers cried in fear, so her teammate licked her tears away to comfort her. Homie said hydration check mid-trauma. Meanwhile, Rin breathed a sigh of relief as that side seemed to be alright now. They managed to arrive in time before it was too late. Now, all they had to be concerned about was the fire bear. Vil launched forward, ready to slay the ferocious beast. Rin was horrified, though she was able to stand without screaming. She guessed it was thanks to the mental control of survival, and it was also thanks to the advantage of being inside the camper van. Just then, the fire bear unleashed a barrage of blazing fireballs, its roars echoing through the forest. Rin's eyes widened in disbelief. There was no way a monster like that could wield magic too. As the fiery projectiles hurtled toward Ed, he clenched his fists and declared that he wouldn't allow the creature to attack. He then used his ice powers to counter the bear's flames, rendering it immobile. Seizing the opening, Vil dashed forward with his weapon drawn, but the fire bear was able to deflect it. Once again, flames sparked around its claws as it tried to conjure another set of fireballs, yet Ed shattered them effortlessly with another wave of ice. He smirked, cold and confident, reminding the beast that he had already warned it. Furious, the bear rushed forward, but so did Vil. Vil didn't hold a grudge against the bear, but if it continued like that, it would hinder other adventurers. Ed, on the other hand, wanted the bear to blame itself, for it came all the way out there. Just then, Vil attacked the bear while Ed shot it with his ice powers from afar. In an instant, its head was severed, shocking Rin. As the monster's lifeless body collapsed with a heavy thud, she couldn't help but exclaim how brilliant, cool, and amazing the fight had been. Meanwhile, Ed found the event weird, wondering what had just happened. Even Vil found it strange, as it was not as expected. Ed agreed he was right because it was all too easy. That was not how it was supposed to be. Vil looked to Ed for an explanation, but he simply shrugged. Just then, Vil asked the priest if he was okay with his injuries. The priest was truly grateful for his help because if it weren't for him, they would have been wiped out. Vil was just glad that they made it in time, and it was fortunate that they met that boy. Meanwhile, Rin eavesdropped on the whole conversation, as she could still hear their voices from inside the camper van. Just then, the priest introduced himself as Lyre, and the children were called Leon and Ada. They formed a party called Lucky Clover, with the orphan children at a church on the outskirts of town. The audacity to call yourselves Lucky Clover when you almost got smoked like brisket. Lento was the fastest in their party, so they sent him to call for reinforcements. Upon mentioning the church, Senyon realized that Lyre was the priest that the Catboy had mentioned. Lyre confirmed it, though he had retired after injuring his knee. He used to be an adventurer as a priest knight. Rin, who was still listening, was amazed to know that this old man had gone through a monk transformation. Lyre was a priest at the church and a former adventurer. Leon was the lion beastman, Ada was the half-elf, while Lento was the werecat. The other children at the orphanage formed parties one after another and completed simple requests to cover their daily expenses. Today they accepted a collection request in the nearby forest, but for some reason they encountered a fire bear. Suddenly Vil asked Lyre why he didn't consider escaping with the children. Liar replied that both Leon and Ada had the ability to avoid attacks, but he alone couldn't stop the bear. He would have been defeated immediately. If he were to collapse, the fire bear would catch up to the children who were trying to escape. By dispersing the fire bear's attention, he stayed behind to create a diversion. Vil finally understood that rather than defeating it, Liar prioritized buying time. However, with him as a priest knight, he could heal and attack at least a little bit. Vil tried to make Liar understand that it was better than running away in pieces and sacrificing someone else. Liar felt a bit guilty, but he was just really glad that Lento made it in time. Rin, who was listening from inside the camper van, realized that it was a difficult problem. Even if everyone escaped together, the difference in strength was clear. She couldn't help but think about the sacrifices of the Lucky Clover party. How Lento ran away while the fire bear was focused on devouring him, and how Liar sacrificed himself like that when he thought about the other children. It wasn't realistic, but then again, she didn't think it was something one could easily throw their life away for. Even if they escaped separately, someone who was caught would have been killed. Sending Lento to call for reinforcements was the best strategy to save the four of them. However, if reinforcements had been delayed, the worst would have happened. Rin was stunned at the thought, especially since they barely made it in time. It was all really close. Meanwhile, Ed wondered why a fire bear would appear in such a shallow area. Normally, it should appear much deeper. Vil added that the fire bear was weak. It should have been stronger and smarter. Liar was surprised to hear it, as for them, it was just a terrifying monster. Vil's like, it's weak, meanwhile Liar's in therapy. Just then, Sinon chimed in, suggesting that they return to the guild first. They needed to report the incident and inform the adventurers. On top of that, they also had to discuss the reward. Hearing that, Vil agreed with the plan. Arya said that the reward was fine, but they had to inform the guild of the incident. Rin agreed with them all, as reporting, informing, and consulting were basics for adults. Vil then gazed at the sky and realized that it was getting dark, so they had to hurry. Before leaving, Vil spoke with Liar. He told him that even though the main road was protected by warding spells, it was dangerous to travel at night. If he accepted their conditions, they had a safe and quick way to transport him and the others to town. Liar was interested, so he asked what Vil was going to do. Later on, Rin exited the camper van, only to find that the Lucky Clover party was all asleep. Vil apologized to her as he had asked Senyon to cast a sleep spell on them. Rin understood for that way they wouldn't notice that they had been put in the camper van. With that, Vil carefully transported the members of the Lucky Clovers into the vehicle. As he did this, Ed finally understood what Vil meant. Truly, Rin was capable of carrying luggage. Senyon chimed in, adding that it included them as well. They were proud of Vil for finding Rin, so they commended him for a good job. Before departing, Vil told Rin that there was a chance they would be cramped at the guild that night, so they wouldn't be able to come back to the vehicle. Rin seemed surprised, so Vil explained that although the situation had happened unexpectedly, it was still best to keep her skills a secret for the foreseeable future. He asked if that was okay, and Rin said yes and even thanked him. However, Rin told Vil that if lives were at stake or during emergencies, he shouldn't hesitate to make use of her skills. She appreciated his consideration, and she wanted to cooperate and help with what she could, so she wanted him to rely on her. Then, to her surprise, Vil told her that it was how he felt as well. Rin was caught off guard by his response, so she frantically said she was aware of it. He said, "I feel the same way," and she immediately blue-screened. Rin had lost her means of living, and she wondered what would happen in the future. In the midst of that anxiety, she met Vil and jumped at the chance without hesitation. If Vil wanted to abandon her, she would have been completely lost in a different world without knowing which way to go. That was why, even if the treatment or environment was like that of a black company, she decided to cling to it in order to survive. However, Vil listened to her opinions even though she was like that. He discussed and adjusted their opinions, and he paid attention to creating the life that she wanted. Arya, Ed, and Senyon all cared about her, although they had just met. Just then, Vil told Rin that they were saved thanks to her, so he thanked her for it. Rin gazed into Vil's genuine eyes, then she smiled and said she was really happy that she could be of help. She thought there was nothing wrong with wanting to be useful to such kind people. Finally, it was time for them to depart. Rin made sure to remind everyone to buckle up properly that time. It turned out that last time, the entire party wasn't wearing seatbelts. She suddenly freaked out when she remembered that she didn't mention that at all. However, it was an emergency, and there was no other choice. Saving lives was their priority. As adventurers, their core strength should be good. With that, Rin didn't hesitate to drive as fast as she could. Guess she learned from the previous vehicular manslaughter. The Lucky Clover was stunned when they woke up, surprised by how quickly they arrived. Just then, someone called out to Liar, Leon, and Ada. It was Lento, crying as he ran toward them. Rin was shocked to see the boy dash past her, which somehow convinced her that he certainly was fast. This ain't a reunion, this is a sponsored Nike ad. As Lento expressed how relieved he was that his friends were safe, Ada and Leon welcomed him into their arms. As they finally reunited, Rin felt teary-eyed, thinking that it was beautiful when friends got along. She then thought about Lento and how he was probably worried about them, but he couldn't wait outside because the guards stopped him. He was anxiously waiting, and then he saw everyone's figures and rushed out. Of course, Rin was only guessing that this was how it played out. Just before entering the city, they dropped the Lucky Clover party, and then Vil and the others woke them up. After all, it was impossible to suddenly appear in front of the gatekeepers without anything and from nowhere. Also, if the baggage carriers who weren't seen suddenly appeared, it would cause confusion. So Rin followed behind in a relaxed manner, and that was how they ended up there. The kids cried as they hugged each other, while Lyre and the rest of the grown-ups only observed them with a warm smile. Just then, Sheila approached them, relieved to see them safe. With that, she welcomed back the Lucky Clover and Gourmands. Vil asked if the guild was already aware of the situation, and Sheila said yes, adding that the guildmaster was waiting. She knew that they were tired, so she asked them to make their way to the guild. Vil understood, but before that, they wanted to prepare themselves first and then follow her. First, he needed Sheila to guide the members of Lucky Clover. Sheila was happy to help, and she shared that originally, they were planning to talk separately with Lucky Clover, so it was fine. As the moon rose in the sky that night, Sheila told everyone to come when they were ready. When they were finally alone, Vil went close to the driver's seat, asking Rin from outside if she could hear his voice. Rin said yes, then she asked if they were going to the guild. Vil confirmed it, but if he said he would prepare, then he couldn't go empty-handed. He wondered if he should bring the dropped items from earlier, but Rin insisted that she had something that seemed suitable. She quickly ran to get it, and she volunteered to wrap it up and bring it. Rin went through her things, and after a while she finally found the arabesque pattern furoshiki, which is simply a wrapping cloth. She was proud to say that it looked like the right thing. She wrapped the dropped item around it and carried it on her back. However, it then dawned on her that in a broad sense it seemed like she was someone who carries luggage. Later on, the two parties entered the guild. After getting through the guards, one of them saw Rin, and they wondered if a child was with the Gourmands before. Though they weren't sure, they convinced themselves that she was just too small to see. Stealth level, toddler-sized. Finally, Rin arrived before the guildmaster's room, where Sheila informed her that he was waiting. Rin's eyes sparkled, excited to see the guildmaster. Before entering, Vil handed the dropped items to Sheila. Since they didn't know what would happen to the reward, they couldn't keep it with them for now. Sheila happily received it, and she promised to keep it in the guild until the decision was finalized. At that moment, Rin understood that until the distribution of the reward was officially decided, they couldn't claim it as theirs. There was also a problem with keeping it in their possession. Just then, Sheila knocked at the door, announcing that she had brought the Gourmands with her. The guildmaster invited them to come in, and upon seeing Vil, he immediately thanked him for the rescue mission. As the guild leader, he appreciated his help in rescuing their affiliated adventurers. Vil remarked that he wasn't such a bad person as to let someone die, and the guildmaster agreed with that. He then told Vil and Rin to take a seat. Suddenly he noticed Rin, so he asked who the little miss was because he hadn't seen her face before. Vil looked back at Rin, and he explained that she was their newcomer. Meanwhile, Rin realized that she had just been called Little Miss, though she wasn't young anymore. At that moment, she realized that it took courage to deny it there. Just then, Rin bowed her head before the guildmaster, telling him that it was nice to meet him. She introduced herself and said that she was still inexperienced, but she promised to do her best. She then mustered all the courage to ask the guildmaster for his guidance and encouragement. The guildmaster seemed horrified when she asked him for his guidance, which puzzled Rin because it seemed like she had said something wrong. The guildmaster asked Vil who the hell Rin was, and he wondered where he had found such a sensible person. He asked if he had kidnapped some high-class missy, but Vil denied it and swore that they had recruited her properly. Man wasn't ready for a functioning human being. Suddenly, the guildmaster started to wrestle Vil, threatening him that it better be true. Vil, on the other hand, argued that it was. In the background, Senyon wasn't amused by their interaction because they talked as if they were not sensible people. Meanwhile, Ed reassured Rin that adventurers tend to be rough and unruly. The guildmaster wanted to question Vil about various things, but that could wait. Vil was surprised, as the man still had something to say. Suddenly, the guildmaster revealed that they needed to deal with the fire bear. Now that he had mentioned it, he quickly apologized to the Gourmands who had encountered the beast. Regarding the recent subjugation mission, the guild would take care of the expenses. Senyon was surprised, thinking that Lucky Clover would cover it since it was their rescue request. The guildmaster explained that it was unexpected for a fire bear to appear in a beginner's hunting ground, and it was more than they had anticipated. He wasn't cruel enough to make them pay for the cost of subjugation. Hearing that, Rin realized that the Lucky Clover seemed to rely on being adventurers to make a living, and she had always thought it must be tough for them to pay the request fee. Suddenly, Sheila served her some tea. and she couldn't help but gush at her cuteness. The guildmaster continued, informing the gourmand that the reward would be 5 gold coins. Additionally, they could take all the dropped items. He asked for their thoughts, and Vil thought that it seemed fair and that they should settle on that. Just then, Vil asked why the fire bear appeared in such a shallow place. He also wondered if there had been similar cases in the past. The guildmaster answered that there were a couple of times when he saw monsters that were at or near the intermediate level, but not once had there been any reports of monsters that were close to the advanced level. Rin was shocked, realizing that what had happened was irregular. It was like a group of close elementary school kids were playing baseball in a field. There had been a few incidents where high school baseball players attacked, but it was nothing serious. This time it was like a major league player or an Olympic representative had come down. Rin thought it was intense, and she was amazed that the gourmands even won. Suddenly, Vil shared that there was a possibility that the status of that fire bear wasn't all that impressive. This baffled the guildmaster, but Vil continued, adding that its appearance and skills were those of a fire bear, but it didn't put up much of a fight. Ed supported Vil's claims, and he shared that it felt like they forcefully turned an ordinary bear into a fire bear. It was hard to make sense of it. Arya was concerned, recalling that Ed's ice didn't even crack. As Rin listened to their discussion, she slowly realized that this was already a case that she couldn't handle. It was nothing but incomprehensible. The guildmaster asked if they actually checked its stats, and Vil replied that he never thought it would turn out like this. He felt sorry for defeating it without even appraising it. Hearing that, the guildmaster realized that they had to strengthen their patrols around the nearby forest and seaside. He also asked the gourmands to take on the patrol quest near El Rage. It was an official request from the guild, and he asked if they would cooperate. Rin was surprised, seeing that the guildmaster himself had asked it. Vil then asked if they could take on quests while doing other quests, and the guildmaster said yes. However, due to the nature of patrol missions, the guildmaster preferred that they not take requests that would take them away from the city. Vil understood, but since there were no urgent cases, he planned to focus on moving around El Rage for a while. Rin felt excited for them because they were personally asked to do patrol duty by their guildmaster. This made her conclude that the gourmands were a pretty strong party. However, this realization suddenly made her question whether someone like her was even necessary in such a strong party. She wondered if it wasn't easy to recruit someone better than her, and with better skills. This girl has the confidence of a wet noodle. As Rin dwelled on her thoughts, the guildmaster settled their agreement. He was feeling generous that night, so he lent them the guild's cozy nap room. The gourmands were surprised as the guildmaster was such a big spender. However, in exchange for that, they must intend to start patrolling the very next day. Suddenly, the guildmaster remembered something, so he asked Vil and Rin to hang around for a bit. Senyon, Arya, and Ed didn't stay for long, and they soon bid the two goodbye. Just then, Rin gazed over at Vil, but he seemed to be in a bad mood. Her stomach rumbled, and she wanted to go home. She couldn't help but sense a rapid decline in his mood, and she hoped that everything was okay. Suddenly, the guildmaster referred to Rin as the girl who handles the baggage, and he asked if her name was Rin. When Rin confirmed it, the guildmaster held out his hand and introduced himself as Tori, the guildmaster of the town of El Raj. He apologized for the disorganized introduction, but Rin didn't seem to mind. After shaking each other's hands, Tori revealed that he had asked them to stay because he wanted to confirm something that Vil had reported. Rin was puzzled, but before Tori could continue, Vil suddenly apologized. He felt it was necessary to speak up about this, as keeping silent would be problematic. Just then, Tori mentioned that this was about the summoning of the Saintess. Rin was stunned, wondering what the man was even talking about. This ain't a meeting anymore, it's a lore drop event. Rin wondered when they had reported it, but she guessed that it was while she was asleep. However, considering how they received the report, it seemed like they didn't know anything about her. It was almost like an act. Suddenly, Vil apologized because it was something that he couldn't avoid. He had to report it to the higher-ups. Rin reassured him that it wasn't a problem, thinking that to report, inform, and consult was extremely important. She told him not to worry because it was only natural to report it. Rin didn't really know how much impact the summoning of this Saintess had in this world, but she understood that not reporting a case with such dangerous implications to the top would be a problem. In an aggressive tone, she declared that to report, inform, and consult were the basics of business communication. That was why they should report to Tori and assess the situation to plan their future strategy. However, if the guild's policy was leaning towards separating Vil's party and seeking protection from the country, then it would make her think a little. If the country decided to provide protection, it might mean losing their freedom. No matter how capable the members of the party were, they couldn't go against the guild's policy. They might be burdened with unreasonable demands, and to avoid the trouble, Rin realized that she could just leave the party and make a grand escape. Of course, she was only kidding about the last part. In fact, it seemed like the party didn't really need someone like her for cooking or carrying luggage. Maybe someone more skilled than her might be able to take her place, and perhaps it was better to part ways right then and there. She had one thought and immediately fell into a void. Just then, Rin's gloomy thoughts were disturbed when Vil suddenly leaned close to her face. As if he could read her thoughts, he asked if she was thinking about leaving them. Rin was baffled, and she frantically denied it, and even swore that she wasn't thinking about it. Vil said whatever, then he held her hand and said that he wouldn't let her get away with that. With a serious face, he told her not to dare and think about running away. Rin wondered what it was, but she felt a strong sense of attachment from Vil. This made her wonder if he was really that upset about the other party members' food. Rin started to think about it, and she realized that even she wanted to hold them back. Just then, Tori flashed an awkward smile. Then he told the two to save their lovers' quarrel for somewhere else. As expected of Rin, she freaked out at his comment. Just then, Tori shifted topics, and he asked if it was true that the Saintess summoning had happened. Rin confirmed it, and she shared that the people in black robes were saying something about summoning saints. Tori understood now. Then he asked to appraise her, though he explained that it didn't mean that he doubted her. Rin wasn't sure about it, worried that there might be any pain or distress. She heard that it could reveal something that one wanted in secret, like their weight. My girl has priorities. As long as it wasn't that, then she would be fine with it. Tori was amused, but he reassured her that he couldn't appraise to such an extent. Suddenly, Tori noticed that Vil was glaring at him, so he jokingly told him to stop it. He just wanted to see her class and skills. Rin also told Vil not to worry, as it didn't seem like an invasive appraisal. However, she seemed a bit concerned that it might reveal things he wasn't comfortable with. Suddenly, Vil leaned close to her face, telling her that status was something she should only show to someone close to her. Rin knew that revealing her status was like exposing her weakness. But she wasn't a combatant, and the only person she needed to show it to was the guildmaster. Wanting to make him feel better, she told Vil that it was okay for him to look too. Vil was shocked, and he instinctively covered his face to hide his reaction. Rin got concerned, wondering if she said something bad. Meanwhile, Tori could only laugh at their interaction. In sessions and such, Rin thought that character introductions at the beginning were important for adventures. However, this made her wonder if it was bad if the camping van was exposed. She didn't know the details of the skills, and she thought it was better for her not to. In terms of literal interpretation, it was highly likely to be perceived as a camping carriage or something. Even if the non-combatant skills were exposed, it wouldn't be much of a setback. If she were a combatant, it would be a different story. If her finishing moves were exposed, her techniques could be anticipated, or her strategies could be deduced from her skills. And besides, as party members, it was important for them to act together. It was also crucial for the leader, Vil, to have an understanding of her status. Suddenly, Tori let out a laugh, telling Rin that it was enough. Generally, she couldn't show her status unless she had a considerable level of trust. She asked if it was like with her party members or family, and she added that it wasn't something for her to openly talk about. Vil still hid his face in disappointment while Tori awkwardly smiled at her, telling her that it was the general idea. Tori hitting her with the "it's giving overshare" smile. Later that night, Tori found out about her class and skills. Summoned Saint aside, it was highly likely that she came from a different world. Rin was shocked, wondering how he even knew. Tori revealed that she had the class Foreigner in her class, and it was said that this class was given to beings who had artificially and deliberately come to this world. This Foreigner class allowed her to acquire a special skill randomly, and it seemed like she could obtain an additional class. Rin only smiled as she listened, but she thought that there were too many things that came to mind. Just then, Vil told her that normally, she could learn one skill per class. On the bright side, Foreigner-san was amazing and she was doing a great job. Thanks to Foreigner-san, she had additional skills and special skills. She always thought that classes were more like light things like races or professions. Meanwhile, Vil noticed that there were many said and seems in her words. Tori thought it was only natural, and it was not like beings from other worlds were common. There wasn't even an elf who remembered those times. In ancient times, there was a story of a priestess princess being summoned to defeat monsters and purify the miasma as she traveled. That was the extent of the story, and Rin recalled that Vil had previously mentioned it. It seemed like they could only confirm it at the level of fairy tales. Just then, Vil realized that if one could add additional skills and special skills without any difficulties, then people would be summoning anyone. Tori then said that if they thought about it logically, summoning from another world was a dubious fairy tale. He couldn't imagine some people would take it seriously and believe in something that was not even certain. And even if there were, Tori doubted that they could provide the necessary magic power. Vil agreed, and he realized that instead of pouring magic power into it, it seemed more efficient to earnestly train and increase their classes. Still, Tori thought that even though there were many powerful special skills, it didn't seem worth it. As Tori pondered the thought of summoning from another world, Rin was overwhelmed by the situation, because it felt like new facts were being revealed one after another. This lore drop got more plot holes than a Marvel Phase 4 movie. So it turned out that she was the lucky one who managed to succeed with that dubious summoning, even though she got summoned because she got caught in the middle of it. The thought of it stressed her out because it only meant she wasn't lucky at all. Just then, a question crossed her mind. For summoning from another world that sounded like a fairy tale, what were they trying to achieve by summoning a saintess? She asked if there were many monster incidents lately, but Vil didn't feel like the frequency had increased. Tori also hadn't heard any rumors of monster groups going wild in this country or any other. It was a twisted way of looking at it, but he couldn't conclude that the incident with the fire bears that day had anything to do with the summoning of the saintess. Rin thought about it, and she guessed it might be related to monsters. In any case, Tori told Rin and Vil that they would continue the investigation, and more information should come in. For now, he wanted Rin to take her time to get used to their world. Rin thanked him, and she also apologized that she couldn't be of any help with knowledge or information. Suddenly, Vil told her not to worry because if she was useful to adventurers, it meant that she was useful to the guildmaster too. He then pointed at Tori, telling Rin that he meant it by that baldy. Tori quickly got defensive, saying that he shaved his head and wasn't bald. "Don't do Mr. Clean like that, bro." Guessing by their interaction, Rin guessed that they were close. Just then, Tori turned to Rin, telling her that she would patrol the sea tomorrow. The time would be around 9 o'clock until a little past 3 o'clock when the tide would rise. Rin's eyes gleamed with excitement as she was eager to patrol the sea. If they could catch some seafood, they might just have a BBQ. Rin was too lost in her own world that she didn't notice that Vil and Tori were staring at her. Vil then told her that they had plenty of time until departure tomorrow, so he suggested buying ingredients at the market before leaving. Rin's eyes gleamed even more, claiming that she really wanted to go to the market. She muttered seafood BBQ in excitement, but Vil had no idea what it was. Meanwhile, Tori smiled warmly at the two. He then told Rin that they were done with the interaction, and they could take a rest for the day if they liked. He also told them to use the sleeping quarters in the back, and he apologized for taking up so much of their time. Later on, Rin saw the room that Tori was talking about, and she was delighted to know that she had a single room all for herself. Before entering, Sheila informed her that the restroom was at the end of the hallway. Rin understood, and she thanked her. After bidding each other goodnight, Sheila told her to do her best tomorrow. However, her cuteness rendered Rin weak, so she promised to do her best. Sheila's face card is that lethal. When the door finally closed, Rin wasted no time diving at the bed. There were various things, the density of this different world and the various ordeals were incredible. To be honest, the scale was so vast and she didn't really understand what was going on. First, it was important to start with what she could do. As they said, even a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. First, she must start by preparing tomorrow's meal. Rin lifted her fist in the air in determination, but before she even knew it, she fell asleep in exhaustion.